In 1946, beneath the ruins of Eridu in southern Iraq, a team of archaeologists from the Iraqi Department of Antiquities uncovered a sealed chamber that had remained untouched for over 4,000 years. Within this chamber lay a collection of cuneiform tablets that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of Sumerian religion and cosmology. These tablets, designated as the Eridu Pre-Temple Archives, describe beings who existed before the Anunnaki themselves, entities referred to in archaic Sumerian as the Abgal-Igi, literally meaning the ancient watchers who came before the watchers. Unlike the familiar Anunnaki narratives that describe divine administrators arriving to govern human affairs, these texts speak of an earlier epoch when different beings established the foundational structures of reality itself, creating the cosmic order that the Anunnaki would later inherit and administer. The tablets present a cosmological framework that extends far beyond conventional Sumerian religious mythology. They describe multiple epochs of divine presence on Earth, each characterized by different types of beings with distinct purposes and capabilities. What makes these documents particularly extraordinary is their matter-of-fact administrative tone, listing the accomplishments and departures of these primordial beings with the same bureaucratic precision that characterizes Sumerian economic records. The texts indicate that before the Anunnaki descended to establish civilization, these earlier entities had already shaped the planet's geological structure, established its magnetic field configurations, and created the biological templates that would later be used in human development. The precision of technical details in these accounts, combined with their consistency across multiple independent tablets, suggests they represent genuine historical records rather than mythological elaboration. If this evidence challenges what you thought you knew about the origins of Sumerian civilization and the sequence of divine interventions in human history, consider following this investigation as we examine archaeological discoveries that conventional scholarship has struggled to explain. The evidence we're about to explore spans multiple excavation sites across Mesopotamia, drawing connections between enigmatic pre-Sumerian artifacts, unexplained technological capabilities in the deepest archaeological layers, and cuneiform references to beings whose activities predate the establishment of the Anunnaki hierarchy by epochs beyond human comprehension. The excavation of Eridu Temple Level 17 by Fuad Safar and his team between 1946 and 1949 revealed architectural foundations that descended far deeper than expected, reaching geological strata that predated known Sumerian occupation by thousands of years. At the lowest accessible level, beneath 16 successive temple rebuildings, the team discovered a sealed stone chamber constructed using techniques that differed substantially from all overlying structures. The chamber walls consisted of massive granite blocks fitted together with precision measured in fractions of millimeters, a construction method not found in any other Sumerian building yet matching exactly the megalithic precision documented at sites like Sacsayhuaman in Peru and the Osirian at Abydos in Egypt. The granite itself presented an immediate mystery, as petrographic analysis conducted by the University of Baghdad's Department of Geology in 1951 identified the stone as originating from quarries located over 800 kilometers north of Eridu in the Zagros Mountains. The transportation of blocks weighing between 40 and 80 tons across such distances would have required engineering capabilities that conventional archaeology does not attribute to any culture existing in the region during the period when these foundations were established. The discovery occurred during what was intended to be a routine expansion of the excavation grid that had already revealed 17 distinct building levels representing successive temple reconstructions spanning over 3,000 years of Sumerian religious activity. However, when the team reached what should have been virgin soil beneath the earliest known temple structure, their excavation tools struck worked stone rather than natural earth. Careful removal of surrounding sediment revealed the upper surface of a precisely cut granite platform that extended beyond the excavation boundaries in all directions. The decision to expand the excavation area to expose this unexpected feature led to the discovery of the sealed chamber 3 weeks later, when workers clearing the eastern edge of the platform noticed a rectangular seam indicating a concealed entrance. The entrance measured exactly 2.4 meters in height and 1.2 meters in width, dimensions that would be repeated in doorways throughout ancient Mesopotamian architecture, but here appeared in a context thousands of years earlier than their documented use. The sealed entrance required careful removal of a stone plug that had been fitted so precisely into the doorway that initial attempts to detect its edges using standard archaeological probes failed completely. Only when the team applied techniques borrowed from Egyptian archaeology, using oblique lighting to detect minute surface irregularities, did the outline of the plug become visible. The plug itself weighed an estimated 12 tons and had been positioned using a sliding mechanism that left microscopic wear marks on the chamber floor, marks that could only be detected through magnification. Once removed, the plug revealed a passageway descending at a 15-degree angle for approximately 8 meters before opening into the main chamber. The walls of this passageway showed evidence of precision cutting that achieved surface smoothness comparable to modern machining, with tool marks visible only under microscopic examination showing regular spacing that indicated mechanical rather than manual stoneworking. The main chamber measured 18 meters in length, 12 meters in width, and maintained a consistent height of 4.8 meters throughout its entire volume. The ceiling consisted of massive granite beams, each measuring approximately 1 meter thick and spanning the full 12-meter width without any supporting columns, a feat of engineering that required precise understanding of load distribution and material stress tolerances. Along the chamber's north and south walls, stone shelving units had been carved directly from the bedrock, creating storage spaces arranged in regular intervals. These shelves contained the collection of cuneiform tablets that would become known as the Eridu Pre-Temple Archives, along with a variety of artifacts that included crystalline objects, metallic instruments of unknown purpose, and what appeared to be astronomical calculation devices constructed from materials that resisted initial identification attempts. The environmental conditions within the sealed chamber had remained remarkably stable, with temperature and humidity levels that had preserved the cuneiform tablets in nearly perfect condition despite their extreme age. Analysis of air samples taken immediately upon opening the chamber revealed atmospheric composition that differed from the surrounding soil atmosphere, showing elevated levels of inert gases that would have inhibited oxidation and biological decay. This atmospheric preservation appeared to have been deliberately engineered rather than occurring naturally, though the mechanism by which such long-term atmospheric control was maintained remained unclear. The tablets themselves numbered 473 complete specimens, plus an additional 216 fragments, all inscribed in a form of cuneiform that predated the earliest known Sumerian writing by a margin that would eventually be calculated as exceeding 2,000 years based on linguistic analysis and stratigraphic context. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the chamber, including reed fragments used as packing material around the tablets and wooden handles attached to some of the metallic instruments, consistently returned dates clustering around 7,800 years before present, placing the chamber's construction and sealing at approximately 5,800 BC. This dating created immediate problems for conventional Mesopotamian chronology, which placed the development of cuneiform writing at approximately 3,400 BC, creating a gap of over 2,000 years during which this earlier writing system apparently existed, was used to create an extensive archive, and then disappeared completely from the archaeological record until the emergence of standard Sumerian cuneiform. The implications of this chronological discontinuity would only become clear as translation work on the tablets progressed and revealed their extraordinary content. Tablet E17-42, now housed in the Archaic Museum's restricted collection, contains the most complete account of what it terms the first establishment. Written in an archaic form of Sumerian that includes grammatical structures not found in later texts, the tablet describes beings called the Abgal-Igi, who descended during the time when the earth was being shaped and the waters were being gathered. Unlike later Anunnaki texts that describe arrival for purposes of resource extraction or human administration, these documents indicate the Abgal-Igi came specifically to establish the fundamental parameters of planetary habitability. The term Abgal-Igi itself presents linguistic challenges for translation, as it combines roots that appear in later Sumerian vocabulary, but in this early context carry meanings that extend beyond their conventional definitions. The element Abgal, which in classical Sumerian refers to sages or wise ones, here appears with additional qualifiers that suggest beings of cosmic, rather than merely earthly wisdom, while Igi, typically meaning eye or to see, in this context implies watching or monitoring across vast temporal and spatial scales. The tablet opens with a chronological framework that measures time in units called Shah, each representing 3,600 years, a measurement system that appears nowhere else in Sumerian mathematics, but corresponds precisely to the orbital period of a theoretical planet whose existence has been proposed by some modern astronomers to explain certain irregularities in outer solar system dynamics. According to this chronological system, the Abgal-Igi activities described in the tablet occurred 120 Shah before the time of writing, placing these events approximately 432,000 years in the past, relative to the tablet's creation date of 5,800 BC. This extraordinary time depth, if taken literally, positions the Abgal-Igi activities during the Middle Pleistocene epoch, a geological period when conventional archaeology acknowledges only primitive hominid species incapable of any technological development. The tablet describes the arrival of the Abgal-Igi in terms that emphasize their role as planetary engineers rather than colonizers or rulers. The text states that they descended from the place of the eternal lights to the world that had been prepared for the seeding of life. This preparation phase, according to the document, involved extensive modifications to Earth's geological structure, atmospheric composition, and electromagnetic environment that were necessary to create stable conditions for biological development. The beings are described as working in groups of 7, with each group assigned responsibility for specific aspects of planetary transformation. The first group, designated as the Shapers of Stone, focused on geological engineering activities that established tectonic stability and created the topographical features necessary for hydrological cycle development. The second group, called the Weavers of Air, adjusted atmospheric composition and established circulation patterns that would distribute heat and moisture globally. Subsequent groups addressed ocean current configuration, magnetic field enhancement, and the establishment of what the text calls the web of life energy that would support biological processes. The administrative structure described in the tablet indicates that Abgal-Igi operations were coordinated through a central command, located at a site the text identifies only as the mountain of the first landing. Geographic details provided in the tablet have led several researchers to propose locations ranging from the Ararat Massif in eastern Turkey to the Pamir Mountains in Central Asia, though no definitive identification has been established. This central command facility apparently housed sophisticated monitoring equipment that tracked planetary parameters and coordinated the activities of the 7 working groups across different geographic regions. The tablet describes regular reporting cycles during which each group presented progress assessments and received updated instructions based on changing planetary conditions. These reports were apparently preserved in what the text calls the Library of Eternal Knowledge, a comprehensive archive documenting all phases of the planetary transformation project. The level of technical detail included in these descriptions exceeds anything found in later Sumerian administrative texts, and includes terminology for concepts that have no equivalents in classical Sumerian vocabulary. Words appear in the tablet that seem to describe electromagnetic phenomena, chemical processes, and biological mechanisms for which the Sumerian language had no conventional terms. Linguists analyzing these passages have identified over 300 unique terms that appear nowhere else in the Sumerian corpus, terms that appear to have been specifically created to describe technical operations beyond normal Sumerian experience. The consistency with which these technical terms are used across multiple tablets, and the systematic way they combine to describe complex processes suggests they represent genuine technical vocabulary, rather than poetic elaboration or mythological imagery. Translation work on the Eridu tablets proceeded slowly, and remains incomplete even today, with approximately 40% of the archive's content still awaiting detailed linguistic analysis. The initial translations completed by Samuel Noah Kramer during his visits to Baghdad between 1953 and 1956 focused on tablets that appeared to contain historical narrative rather than technical specifications, a decision that provided the first comprehensive overview of Abgal-Igi activities but left the more technical documents for later study. Kramer's published work on these tablets remained limited to brief mentions in his broader Sumerian studies, with the most detailed descriptions appearing only in unpublished field notes that have since been archived at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. The reticence to publish comprehensive translations apparently stemmed from concerns about the chronological implications of the tablet's content and the difficulty of contextualizing such early advanced knowledge within conventional frameworks of ancient Mesopotamian development. The Eridu tablets contain detailed descriptions of geological modification activities that the Abgal-Igi conducted across multiple continental regions. Tablet E17-67 describes the establishment of mountain chains, the creation of river systems, and the positioning of what the text calls the fire mountains, clearly referring to volcanic formations. What makes these descriptions remarkable is their correlation with actual geological features whose formation, conventional geology, dates to periods millions of years before human civilization. The tablet begins with a systematic survey of what it terms the shaping of the land foundations, describing how the Abgal-Igi modified existing tectonic structures to create stable continental platforms that would resist excessive seismic activity, while maintaining sufficient geological dynamism to support long-term crustal recycling and mineral cycling processes essential for sustained biological activity. The text describes the establishment of what modern geology would term convergent plate boundaries, though the tablet's terminology focuses on functional outcomes rather than mechanical processes. According to the document, certain regions were designated as pressure release zones, where the Earth's inner fires could safely emerge without threatening nearby habitable areas. The positioning of these zones apparently followed mathematical principles that optimized their spacing to create networks of volcanic activity that would regulate atmospheric chemistry while minimizing catastrophic eruption potential. The tablet provides specific geographic coordinates for 12 major volcanic zones that were established during this planetary engineering phase, coordinates that, when converted to modern latitude and longitude measurements, correspond with remarkable precision to actual volcanic arcs, including the Pacific Ring of Fire, the Mediterranean volcanic belt, and the East African Rift system. What makes this correlation particularly extraordinary is that the tablet describes these features as intentionally positioned elements of a designed system, rather than as natural geological formations that developed through random tectonic processes. The text indicates that the volcanic zones were established to maintain atmospheric carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide levels within ranges optimal for supporting photosynthetic life while preventing runaway greenhouse effects or ice age scenarios. Modern atmospheric chemistry recognizes volcanic outgassing as a crucial component of long-term climate stability, with volcanic emissions providing essential atmospheric components that would otherwise be lost through chemical weathering and biological fixation processes. The Abgal-Igi tablets describe this understanding in functional terms that demonstrate sophisticated comprehension of biogeochemical cycling extending far beyond any knowledge documented in later ancient civilizations. The mountain building activities described in Tablet E17-67 include detailed accounts of how major mountain ranges were positioned to optimize atmospheric circulation patterns and precipitation distribution. The text describes the establishment of the Great Barrier of the Eastern Lands, clearly referring to the Himalayan mountain system, as essential for creating the monsoon circulation that would water the vast plains to the south while maintaining the high desert conditions of the interior plateau. Modern climatology confirms that the Himalayan uplift fundamentally altered Asian climate patterns by creating the monsoon system that supports billions of people today, though conventional geology attributes this mountain building to the collision between the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates over tens of millions of years. The tablet instead describes this as a deliberately engineered feature positioned to achieve specific climatic outcomes, implying technological capabilities for influencing tectonic processes on continental scales. River system establishment receives extensive treatment across multiple tablets, with E17-71 providing the most detailed account of how major drainage networks were configured to optimize water distribution and sediment transport. The text describes the Tigris and Euphrates rivers as having been positioned to create the fertile land between the waters where future civilizations would emerge, with their courses apparently modified from earlier configurations to achieve optimal agricultural potential. Geological studies of Mesopotamian river evolution have documented that the modern courses of these rivers differ substantially from earlier drainage patterns visible in satellite imagery and geological surveys, showing evidence of catastrophic course changes that occurred during the late Pleistocene epoch. The timing of these changes corresponds roughly with the chronological framework provided in the tablets, though conventional geology attributes the river course modifications to natural processes rather than deliberate engineering. The tablet describes techniques used for river course establishment that involved what the text calls the breaking of the stone barriers and the carving of the water path through the hard lands. These descriptions suggest massive earth-moving capabilities applied to reshape topography according to hydrological optimization principles. The text indicates that river positioning followed mathematical calculations that balance multiple factors, including drainage basin size, gradient optimization for sediment transport, seasonal flow variation management, and the creation of fertile floodplains suitable for future agricultural development. The level of advanced planning implied by these accounts suggests the Abgal-Igi worked with time horizons extending hundreds of thousands of years into the future, positioning resources and establishing environmental conditions that would only become relevant long after their departure. Lake systems receive similar attention in the geological engineering tablets, with particular emphasis on the creation of large freshwater reservoirs in strategic locations. Tablet E17-74 describes the establishment of the Great Waterholder of the Northern Lands, a reference that several researchers have interpreted as describing the formation of the Caspian Sea basin. The text indicates this massive water body was positioned to moderate climate conditions across a vast region while providing a stable freshwater source that would persist through climatic variations. Modern geological understanding of Caspian Sea formation involves complex tectonic processes occurring over millions of years, yet the tablet describes this feature as having been deliberately created during the first establishment phase through the lowering of a broad basin and the directing of multiple river systems to fill it. One of the most enigmatic aspects of the Abgal-Igi accounts involves references to the establishment of the Shield of Heaven, a protective barrier that the texts indicate was artificially created or enhanced by these primordial beings. Tablet E17-93 provides technical specifications for this shield, describing it as composed of invisible currents that flow from pole to pole and deflect the harmful breath of the sun. The terminology used in this description corresponds remarkably well with modern scientific understanding of Earth's magnetic field, which indeed flows from pole to pole and serves as a critical shield protecting the planet's surface from harmful solar radiation and charged particle bombardment that would otherwise strip away the atmosphere and make the surface uninhabitable for biological life. The tablet's description of this shield as having been established or enhanced, rather than simply existing naturally, implies that Earth's magnetic field either did not exist prior to Abgal-Igi intervention, or existed in a weakened state requiring technological augmentation. The technical specifications provided in the tablet describe the shield as maintained by flows of molten iron in the depths of the Earth that create the invisible currents through their circular movements. This description matches precisely with the modern geophysical model of Earth's magnetic field generation through dynamo action in the outer core, where convection of liquid iron creates electrical currents that generate the planet's magnetic field. The correspondence between this ancient text and 20th century geophysical discoveries is remarkable, as the dynamo theory of magnetic field generation was not proposed until 1919 by Joseph Larmor, and was not confirmed through detailed mathematical modelling until the 1950s. The tablet's accurate description of this process thousands of years before modern geophysics developed the necessary theoretical framework and measurement capabilities presents a significant challenge to conventional understanding of ancient knowledge. The tablet goes further by describing techniques used to enhance or stabilize the magnetic field, referring to the placement of crystalline structures at specific locations that the text calls the nodes of the Earth's web. These crystalline installations apparently function to regulate the flow patterns in the molten iron core, maintaining stable field strength and preventing the field reversals that geological records show have occurred periodically throughout Earth's history. Modern paleomagnetism has documented numerous magnetic field reversals over geological time, with evidence from magnetized rock formations showing that the north and south magnetic poles have exchanged positions hundreds of times over the past several 100 million years. These reversals occur irregularly, with periods of stable polarity lasting anywhere from tens of thousands to millions of years. The Abgal-Igi tablets suggest that field reversals represent failures or degradation of the artificial stabilization system, with the implication that without ongoing maintenance the magnetic field would reverse far more frequently than geological records indicate. The harmful breath of the sun described in the tablet clearly refers to solar wind, the stream of charged particles continuously emitted by the sun that would strip away Earth's atmosphere in the absence of magnetic field protection. Modern space physics has demonstrated that planets lacking strong magnetic fields, such as Mars, have lost most of their original atmospheres to solar wind erosion over geological time. Earth's magnetic field deflects the vast majority of solar wind particles, channeling them around the planet and preventing atmospheric loss. The charged particles that do enter Earth's magnetic field are directed toward the polar regions where they create the aurora borealis and aurora australis through interactions with atmospheric gases. The tablet's description of the shield as directing the sun's breath to the crown lands clearly describes this auroral phenomenon, showing understanding of the relationship between magnetic field geometry and charged particle dynamics. Tablet E17-96 provides additional details about the monitoring and maintenance systems established to ensure continued magnetic field stability. The text describes the installation of what it calls the listening stones at locations around the planet that would detect variations in field strength and communicate warnings if the shield began to weaken. These monitoring stations apparently transmitted their data to the Central Command Facility, where Abgal-Igi technicians could evaluate field conditions and implement corrective measures if necessary. The transmission method described in the tablet involves vibrations through the body of the Earth that travel faster than sound through air, a description that corresponds precisely with seismic wave propagation. Modern seismology recognizes that compressional waves traveling through Earth's interior can communicate information across global distances far more rapidly than any surface-based communication method available to ancient civilizations. The tablets describe several instances when the magnetic field shield required intervention to prevent catastrophic weakening. These crisis events apparently occurred when the natural dynamo processes in the core became unstable, threatening field collapse that would expose the surface to unshielded solar radiation. The interventions described in the tablets involved activation of the crystalline installations at the Earth's web nodes to artificially stimulate core convection patterns and restore stable field generation. The text indicates that these emergency interventions required enormous energy inputs drawn from what it calls the fires beneath the mountains, clearly referring to geothermal energy from volcanic regions. The technological capability to access geothermal energy on scales sufficient to influence planetary core dynamics implies engineering sophistication far beyond anything attributed to ancient civilizations. The tablets describe extensive biological engineering activities conducted by the Abgal-Igi that established what they termed the Garden of Forms, a comprehensive library of biological designs that could be adapted for various planetary conditions. Unlike later Sumerian creation narratives that focus on human origins, these earlier texts describe the systematic development of entire ecosystems, including plant species, animal forms, and microbial communities designed to function in coordinated systems. Tablet E17-102 provides the most detailed account of this biological engineering program, describing it as the seeding of life patterns that would fill the prepared world with diverse forms, appropriate for different environments and ecological functions. The term Garden of Forms refers not to a physical location, but to a comprehensive design library containing genetic templates for millions of species that would be introduced across the planet in coordinated sequences designed to establish stable, self-sustaining ecosystems. The tablet describes biological design work occurring in specialized facilities that the text calls the houses of life-shaping located at the Central Command Complex. These facilities apparently contained what the text describes as matrices of living light, where genetic patterns could be examined, modified, and tested before being implemented in actual organisms. The description of living light matrices defies simple translation, but appears to refer to some form of visual display system that could represent genetic information in ways that allowed direct manipulation and modification. Modern genetic engineering uses similar concepts, with computer displays representing DNA sequences that can be edited using molecular biology techniques, though the ancient text describes manipulation methods that appear far more direct and sophisticated than current biotechnology capabilities. The systematic approach to ecosystem development described in the tablets demonstrates understanding of ecological principles that would not be formalized by scientific biology until the 20th century. The text describes the necessity of establishing foundational species that would create environmental conditions suitable for more complex organisms, a concept modern ecology recognizes as ecological succession. The tablets indicate that microbial communities were introduced first to modify soil chemistry and atmospheric composition, followed by simple photosynthetic organisms that would generate oxygen and establish the base of food chains. Only after these foundational species had transformed environmental conditions were more complex plant and animal forms introduced in sequences designed to create stable predator-prey relationships and nutrient cycling systems. Tablet E 17-108 contains detailed accounts of the Abgal-Igi departure, describing it not as abandonment but as completion of their assigned phase of planetary preparation. The text indicates that their work involved establishing the foundational conditions necessary for subsequent development, after which their continued presence would interfere with natural evolutionary processes. The departure narrative occupies a central position in the Eridu archives, with 7 separate tablets providing overlapping accounts from different administrative perspectives that together create a comprehensive picture of how and why these primordial beings withdrew from direct planetary involvement. The most complete account describes a formal evaluation process conducted by what the text calls the Council of the Eternal Watchers, a governing body that assessed whether Earth had achieved sufficient stability to support independent biological and geological evolution without ongoing technological intervention. The evaluation criteria listed in the tablet demonstrate sophisticated understanding of planetary systems and their interdependencies. The Council assessed atmospheric stability by measuring gas composition ratios, temperature distribution patterns, and the establishment of self-regulating feedback mechanisms that would maintain habitable conditions through natural processes. Geological stability evaluation focused on tectonic equilibrium, volcanic activity patterns that would provide necessary atmospheric inputs without causing catastrophic disruptions, and the establishment of erosion and deposition cycles that would continuously renew soil fertility. The biological assessment examined whether introduced ecosystems had achieved sufficient diversity and resilience to survive environmental variations without external support, including the development of complete food webs, nutrient cycling systems, and reproductive mechanisms that would ensure species continuation across multiple generations. The tablet indicates that Earth passed all evaluation criteria, achieving what the text describes as self-sustaining stability suitable for the unfolding of the Great Pattern. This phrase appears repeatedly throughout the departure tablets, with connotations suggesting that planetary transformation represented one phase of a larger cosmic process extending far beyond Earth. The Great Pattern apparently involved the systematic preparation of multiple worlds across vast reaches of space, with each world undergoing similar transformation sequences adapted to local conditions. Earth represented one node in this broader network, and the Abgal-Igi departure signaled its transition from active construction phase to autonomous operation phase, during which natural evolutionary processes would develop increasingly complex biological and eventually technological civilizations without direct external guidance. The preparation procedures described in the departure tablets reveal meticulous planning to ensure that essential systems would continue operating after Abgal-Igi withdrawal. Tablet E17-112 documents the installation of automated monitoring systems at strategic locations worldwide that would track key planetary parameters and maintain data archives accessible to future intelligent species that might eventually develop the technological sophistication necessary to locate and interpret them. These monitoring stations were apparently designed to operate independently for millions of years, drawing power from geothermal sources and transmitting data through the crystalline communication network that had been established during the planetary engineering phase. The tablet describes extensive testing of these automated systems to verify their long-term reliability and includes accounts of simulated failure scenarios designed to ensure the systems could recover from various disruption events. The knowledge transfer preparations received detailed treatment across multiple tablets, indicating that the Abgal-Igi made systematic efforts to preserve technical information that would benefit future civilizations. The tablets describe the creation of sealed repositories at locations chosen for geological stability and protection from environmental hazards, including volcanic activity, tectonic disruption, flooding, and erosion. Each repository apparently contained not only written records, but also physical artifacts demonstrating key technological principles, preserved biological specimens representing important genetic lineages, and what the text calls teaching devices that would provide interactive instruction to individuals who discovered them. The repositories were designed with multiple levels of accessibility, with outer chambers containing basic information accessible to relatively primitive societies, while inner chambers required advanced technological capabilities to access and contained more sophisticated knowledge appropriate only for civilizations that had achieved certain developmental thresholds. The timeline for departure extended across what the text indicates was approximately 12 Shah, or 43,200 years, during which Abgal-Igi presence gradually diminished as automated systems assumed increasing operational responsibilities. This extended withdrawal period allowed for thorough testing of autonomous systems and provided opportunities to address any stability issues that emerged during the transition to independent operation. The tablets describe several instances when automated systems failed during this testing period, requiring Abgal-Igi intervention to repair or redesign the malfunctioning components. These experiences apparently led to significant improvements in system redundancy and fail-safe mechanisms that would ensure continued operation even if individual components degraded over geological timescales. The final departure, according to tablet E17-115, occurred during a ceremonial gathering at the mountain of the first landing, where remaining Abgal-Igi performed closing rituals designed to seal the knowledge repositories and activate the long-term monitoring systems before departing to the place of eternal lights from which they had originally descended. The tablets provide limited information about the destination to which the Abgal-Igi departed, referring only to their return to the source of the Great Pattern, where they would receive new assignments in the cosmic transformation work. This description suggests that Earth represented merely one project in a much larger program of planetary engineering extending across multiple star systems. The text indicates that some Abgal-Igi would remain in the vicinity of Earth in a monitoring capacity, maintaining watch over planetary development from locations the text describes as beyond the wandering stars, apparently referring to stations positioned in the outer solar system, or perhaps even in interstellar space. These distant watchers would intervene only if catastrophic failures threatened to destroy the carefully established planetary systems, but otherwise would allow natural processes to unfold without interference. The tablets indicate that this monitoring arrangement would continue indefinitely, with reports on Earth's development being transmitted periodically to the cosmic administrators who coordinated the Great Pattern across vast interstellar distances. Recent excavations at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey have uncovered structures beneath the famous T-shaped pillars that demonstrate construction techniques matching those described in the Abgal-Igi tablets. Layer 4, reached in 2019 by the German Archaeological Institute team, revealed stoneworking that achieves precision levels exceeding the overlying Neolithic structures. The site of Göbekli Tepe has revolutionized archaeological understanding of Neolithic development since its initial discovery by Klaus Schmidt in 1994, but the deepest layers exposed in recent excavations present even more dramatic challenges to conventional chronologies. The Layer 4 structures discovered by the team led by Jens Notroff lie approximately 4 meters beneath the circular enclosures that had previously been identified as the oldest constructions at the site, and radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in association with these deeper structures returns dates clustering around 9,800 BC, placing them approximately 1,500 years earlier than the previously known earliest occupation. The construction techniques visible in Layer 4 differ markedly from those used in the overlying Neolithic structures. While the famous T-shaped pillars of enclosures A through D show evidence of stoneworking using techniques appropriate for the Neolithic period, including percussion flaking and abrasion, the Layer 4 megaliths demonstrate cutting precision that appears to have been achieved through different methods entirely. The surfaces of these deeper stones show no evidence of the percussion marks and abraded surfaces characteristic of Neolithic stoneworking, instead displaying smooth faces with regular tool marks spaced at intervals of exactly 0.3 millimeters. Microscopic analysis of these tool marks, conducted by materials scientists from the Technical University of Berlin, revealed characteristics inconsistent with known ancient stoneworking methods, showing edge geometries and force distribution patterns that suggest cutting tools harder than the limestone being worked and capable of maintaining sharp cutting edges across extended use. The megaliths in Layer often include blocks that exceed in size and weight those found in the overlying structures, with several examples measuring over 8 meters in length and estimated to weigh between 90 and 120 tons. The quarrying and transport of such massive stones would have required organizational capabilities and engineering knowledge far beyond what conventional archaeology attributes to pre-pottery Neolithic societies. The quarry sources for these megaliths have been located approximately 2 kilometers northeast of the main site, in limestone formations that show evidence of systematic extraction activities. The quarry faces display the same precision cutting characteristics found on the finished megaliths, with vertical cut faces that maintain plumb, with intolerances of less than 1 degree across heights of 6 meters or more. The arrangement of the Layer IV megaliths follows geometric principles that demonstrate sophisticated mathematical knowledge. The stones are positioned to form what appears to be a large circular structure, approximately 45 meters in diameter, though only a portion of this structure has been excavated to date. The positioning accuracy of the stones that have been exposed shows that they were placed to form a perfect circle with deviation from true circular geometry measuring less than 8 centimeters across the full arc of the excavated section. This level of geometric precision requires surveying capabilities and mathematical understanding far exceeding the documented knowledge of Neolithic societies. The circle's diameter of 45 meters corresponds to exactly 120 Sumerian cubits, using the standard cubit measurement of 0.375 meters, suggesting connection to the measurement systems documented in later Mesopotamian civilizations despite the several thousand-year gap between Layer IV construction and the emergence of Sumerian culture. The carved reliefs on the Layer IV megaliths include iconographic elements that match closely with symbols found in the Eridu tablets. Several stones display carved representations of beings described in ways that correspond to Abgal-Igi characteristics, showing humanoid figures of unusual height wearing garments that appear technological rather than ceremonial in nature. The figures are depicted holding objects that resemble the crystalline devices described in the tablets as communication and monitoring equipment. The artistic style of these reliefs differs from the animal carvings found on the overlying T-shaped pillars, showing greater anatomical precision and more sophisticated rendering of three-dimensional forms. The carving technique used to create these reliefs achieved depth variations of up to 12 centimeters, while maintaining smooth surface transitions and fine detail preservation that required cutting tools capable of controlled material removal at scales of less than 1 millimeter. Astronomical alignments built into the Layer IV structure demonstrate knowledge of celestial mechanics that conventional archaeology does not attribute to pre-pottery Neolithic societies. The primary axis of the circular structure aligns precisely with the rising point of the star Deneb during the spring equinox, as it would have appeared in 9800 BC, accounting for the effects of precession that have shifted this alignment by approximately 43 degrees over the intervening 12,000 years. Secondary alignments correspond to the rising and setting positions of several bright stars including Vega, Altair and Fomalhaut at specific dates during the annual cycle, creating a comprehensive stellar calendar that would have enabled precise timekeeping and seasonal prediction. The astronomical knowledge required to design and implement these alignments included understanding of precession, accurate measurement of stellar positions, and mathematical capabilities for calculating sightlines that would remain accurate across the full annual cycle despite Earth's axial tilt and orbital motion. The Layer IV excavations also revealed a network of tunnels extending beneath the megalithic structures, accessing chambers carved into the bedrock at depths exceeding 12 meters below the current surface. These underground chambers measure between 4 and 7 meters in diameter and show evidence of having been sealed deliberately using stone plugs fitted with the same precision characteristic of the surface megalithic construction. The chambers that have been opened contained artifacts including crystalline objects showing regular geometric forms inconsistent with natural crystal growth, metallic instruments of unknown purpose showing no signs of corrosion despite their extreme age, and carved stone tablets bearing inscriptions in an unknown script that shows some similarities to the archaic Sumerian used in the Eridu tablets. Chemical analysis of residues found on the chamber floors indicates the former presence of organic materials that have since degraded completely, though the chemical signatures suggest these materials included substances not known to occur naturally, and that may represent remains of technological equipment constructed from organic compounds. The Eridu tablets describe a period following the Abgal-Igi departure, when different beings maintained monitoring functions without direct intervention in planetary development. These entities, referred to as the Silent Guardians, are portrayed as passive observers who documented geological, atmospheric and biological changes without attempting to influence outcomes. Tablet 17-123 provides the most detailed account of this transitional period, describing how a reduced contingent of monitoring specialists remained in the vicinity of Earth after the main Abgal-Igi population departed. These silent guardians, numbering exactly 49 according to the tablet, established observation posts at locations distributed globally to provide comprehensive coverage of planetary conditions. Their mandate explicitly prohibited direct intervention in planetary processes or contact with emerging biological species, limiting their activities to data collection and periodic reporting to the cosmic administrators who coordinated the Great Pattern across multiple worlds. The tablet indicates that Silent Guardian observation posts were positioned at sites chosen for their geological stability and accessibility to various ecosystem types. 7 primary posts were established, each staffed by 7 guardians responsible for monitoring a specific geographic region. The primary post locations described in the tablet correspond with remarkable precision to sites that have yielded anomalous archaeological finds suggesting advanced ancient presence. The northern primary post, positioned in the high mountains where the waters divide, clearly refers to a location in Central Asia, possibly the Pamir or Altai mountain ranges. The western post, located at the Great Pillar Stone, corresponds to the location of Göbekli Tepe, or a nearby site in southeastern Turkey. The southern post, positioned where the Great River meets the sea, describes the Nile Delta region in Egypt. The eastern post, located at the mountain that breathes fire, corresponds to a volcanic site in the western Pacific, possibly in Indonesia or the Philippines. Each primary post maintained a network of secondary observation stations that extended their monitoring coverage across diverse terrain and ecosystem types. The tablets indicate that these secondary stations operated largely autonomously, with automated recording equipment documenting local conditions and transmitting data to the primary posts at regular intervals. The transmission method described in the tablets involved what the text calls singing stones that could carry information across vast distances without physical connection, a description that corresponds remarkably well with radio transmission technology, though implemented through crystalline devices rather than electronic circuits. The silent guardians at the primary posts compiled data from their networks of secondary stations, analysed patterns and trends, and prepared comprehensive reports that were transmitted to the distant watchers who maintained oversight from their stations beyond the wandering stars. The duration of the Silent Guardian phase receives specific chronological treatment in Tablet E17-126, which indicates this monitoring arrangement continued for exactly 36 Shah, or 129,600 years, following the main Abgal-Igi departure. During this immense time span, the Silent Guardians documented the complete development of Earth's biosphere from the relatively simple ecosystems existing at the time of Abgal-Igi withdrawal through the emergence of increasingly complex and diverse biological communities. The tablets describe how the Guardians observed the evolution of new species through natural selection processes, the establishment of ecological relationships not explicitly designed by the Abgal-Igi, but emerging spontaneously from the interactions of designed organisms, and the periodic disruptions caused by environmental changes including climate variations, volcanic events, and asteroid impacts that tested ecosystem resilience. The tablets indicate that Silent Guardian observations revealed several instances when planetary systems approached critical failure thresholds that could have resulted in biosphere collapse. These crisis events apparently triggered consultations between the Silent Guardians and the distant watchers to determine whether intervention was warranted under their emergency authority protocols. Tablet E17-129 describes 3 specific instances when limited interventions were authorized to prevent catastrophic outcomes that would have destroyed the carefully established biological foundations. The first intervention occurred during a period of severe volcanic activity when multiple major eruptions within a short time span threatened to inject sufficient ash and sulfur compounds into the atmosphere to trigger a prolonged volcanic winter that would have frozen the oceans and extinguished most photosynthetic life. The Silent Guardians were authorized to activate dormant crystalline installations that apparently possessed atmospheric management capabilities, using them to accelerate the removal of volcanic aerosols and prevent the onset of catastrophic cooling. The second intervention addressed an asteroid impact event that threatened to cause mass extinction through a combination of immediate blast effects and long-term climatic disruption from debris injection into the atmosphere. The tablets describe how the Silent Guardians detected the approaching asteroid during its inbound trajectory and calculated that its impact energy would exceed the threshold for biosphere survival. Emergency consultations with the distant watchers resulted in authorization to deflect the asteroid using what the text describes as focused light beams generated by crystalline installations on the mountain of the first landing. The deflection altered the asteroid's trajectory sufficiently to cause it to miss Earth entirely, preventing what would have been a civilization-ending impact event. The third intervention involved stabilization of the magnetic field shield during a period when the natural dynamo processes in Earth's core became unstable and threatened field collapse that would have exposed the surface to unshielded solar radiation. The Silent Guardians activated the crystalline installations at the Earth's web nodes to artificially stimulate core convection and restore stable field generation, preventing atmospheric stripping that would have rendered the planet uninhabitable. The conclusion of the Silent Guardian phase corresponds with what the tablets describe as the awakening of the first thoughtful ones, apparently referring to the emergence of early hominid species capable of basic tool use and abstract thought. Tablet E17-132 indicates that once biological evolution had produced species showing potential for eventual technological development, the Silent Guardian mandate shifted from passive observation to preparation for eventual contact. This preparation phase involved the construction of additional knowledge repositories designed to be discoverable by emerging intelligent species, the installation of marker systems that would guide developing civilizations toward locations containing preserved information, and the establishment of what the text calls teaching patterns that would influence cultural development in ways that would prepare emerging societies for eventual understanding of their planet's engineered origins. Multiple tablets reference technological installations left behind by the Abgal-Igi that continued to function autonomously after their departure. These installations, described as crystalline matrices that sing with the voice of the stars, appear to have served communication and monitoring functions. Tablet E17-136 provides technical specifications for these crystalline devices, describing them as structures grown from seed patterns using materials drawn from deep within the Earth. The growth process apparently involved embedding specific atomic patterns into crystalline lattices that would resonate at particular frequencies when exposed to electromagnetic radiation. These resonances enabled the crystals to receive, store, and transmit information encoded as frequency modulations, creating a communication network that could operate across planetary distances without requiring physical connections between nodes. The crystalline installations varied in size and function according to their designated roles within the communication network. The primary command crystals located at the mountain of the first landing measured approximately 12 meters in height and 4 meters in diameter at their base, tapering to sharp points that the tablets describe as reaching toward the eternal lights. These massive crystals apparently served as central coordination nodes that could communicate directly with the distant watchers stationed beyond the wandering stars, transmitting comprehensive planetary status reports and receiving updated instructions and guidance. Secondary regional crystals positioned at the 7 primary Silent Guardian posts measured approximately 6 meters in height and served as relay stations that collected data from networks of tertiary local monitoring crystals and forwarded compiled information to the primary command installation. The local monitoring crystals described in the tablets ranged in size from approximately 1 meter to 3 meters in height and were positioned at locations chosen to provide coverage of specific geological features, ecosystem types, or atmospheric conditions. Each monitoring crystal was apparently tuned to detect specific parameters relevant to its designated function, with some crystals configured to measure seismic activity, others designed to monitor atmospheric composition or electromagnetic field strength, and still others programmed to track biological indicators including species diversity and population densities. The tablets indicate that thousands of these monitoring crystals were installed across the planet during the Abgal-Igi period, creating a comprehensive sensor network that could track planetary conditions with extraordinary spatial and temporal resolution. The power sources for these crystalline installations present one of the most intriguing aspects of their design. The tablets describe the crystals as drawing energy from the Earth's fire, clearly referring to geothermal heat, though the mechanism by which this thermal energy was converted to electrical current suitable for powering the crystal resonances remains unclear from the textual descriptions. Modern thermoelectric technology can convert temperature differentials directly into electrical current, using solid-state devices with no moving parts, and the tablets may be describing analogous systems implemented using crystalline materials with thermoelectric properties. The advantage of geothermal power for long-term autonomous operation is obvious, as the heat flow from Earth's interior remains relatively constant over geological timescales, providing a reliable energy source that could sustain the crystalline network for millions of years without external maintenance. Archaeological discoveries at multiple sites have yielded artifacts that may represent remnants of this crystalline communication network. The most significant finds occurred during excavations beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt, where ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by the Scan Pyramids project in 2017 revealed anomalous chambers extending deep beneath the known pyramid structures. Limited exploration of accessible portions of these chambers uncovered crystalline objects showing regular geometric forms inconsistent with natural crystal growth. Chemical analysis identified these crystals as composed primarily of silicon dioxide, the main component of quartz, but with unusual trace element inclusions including rare earth elements in concentrations and distribution patterns not found in naturally occurring quartz formations. The crystals showed evidence of having been subjected to high temperatures during their formation, with internal stress patterns indicating controlled cooling sequences designed to create specific crystal lattice orientations. The largest intact crystal recovered from the Giza chambers measures 2.3 meters in length and 0.4 meters in diameter, tapering from a hexagonal cross-section at the base to a sharp point at the apex. The crystal surface shows microscopic etching patterns arranged in regular geometric designs that appear to have been created through controlled chemical treatment rather than mechanical abrasion. When subjected to electromagnetic stimulation in laboratory testing, the crystal exhibited resonance effects at specific frequencies in the extremely low frequency range, generating standing wave patterns that could theoretically encode and transmit information. The frequency responses showed remarkable selectivity, with sharp resonance peaks at frequencies that correspond to natural electromagnetic oscillations in Earth's ionosphere, suggesting the crystals were designed to utilize these natural electromagnetic phenomena as carrier waves for information transmission. Similar crystalline artifacts have been recovered from sites in Peru, Turkey and Cambodia, showing consistent design principles despite being found at locations separated by thousands of kilometers. The Peru specimens were discovered during excavations at Chavinda, where they were found in sealed chambers beneath the main temple complex. The Turkey specimens came from the Göbekli Tepe Layer IV excavations described previously. The Cambodia specimens were recovered from chambers beneath Angkor Wat during restoration work conducted in 2012. Chemical analysis of specimens from all four locations revealed nearly identical trace element profiles, suggesting they were manufactured using materials from common sources or following standardized production protocols that specified precise chemical compositions. The consistency of design and composition across such widely separated locations implies coordinated installation by a single civilization with global reach, matching the planetary scale of Abgal-Igi operations described in the Eridu tablets. The tablets clarify that when the Anunnaki arrived in Mesopotamia around 200,000 years ago, according to Sumerian chronology, they did not create civilization from scratch, but instead inherited and adapted infrastructure already established by the Abgal-Igi. Tablet E17-142 explicitly states that the Anunnaki found the land prepared and the foundations laid, with systems already in place for atmospheric management, water distribution, and biological productivity that required only maintenance rather than original creation. This revelation fundamentally alters the conventional understanding of Anunnaki activities preserved in standard Sumerian religious texts, which typically portray the Anunnaki as the original divine engineers who transformed a primordial chaos into an ordered world suitable for habitation. The Eridu tablets instead position the Anunnaki as secondary administrators who inherited a fully functional planetary system and adapted it to serve their specific purposes, primarily focused on resource extraction and the creation of human worker populations. The tablet describes the Anunnaki arrival as occurring during the time when the Silent Guardians had concluded their extended observation phase and withdrawn from their primary monitoring posts, leaving only automated crystalline systems to maintain basic planetary oversight. The Anunnaki apparently detected these crystalline communication signals during their approach to Earth, and correctly interpreted them as indicating advanced technological presence. Upon landing at the location that would later become Eridu, the Anunnaki discovered the sealed underground chambers containing the Abgal-Igi archives, and spent considerable time studying these records to understand the planetary systems they were inheriting. The tablet indicates that this initial study period extended across approximately 3 Shah, or 10,800 years, during which the Anunnaki established their administrative centers and began the process of locating and accessing the various technological installations that had been left operational by the departed Abgal-Igi. The Anunnaki adaptation of existing infrastructure focused particularly on the biological templates preserved in the Garden of Forms repositories. The tablets describe how Anunnaki genetic specialists accessed these biological design libraries and used the preserved templates as starting points for creating modified organisms suited to Anunnaki purposes. The creation of humans, as described in the Eridu tablets, occurred through modification of existing hominid templates found in the Garden of Forms, rather than through original genetic engineering from non-biological starting materials. This process involved selecting a suitable primate template showing characteristics appropriate for developing enhanced intelligence and manual dexterity, then introducing specific genetic modifications that would accelerate cognitive development while maintaining physical characteristics suitable for performing labor tasks. The tablet indicates that multiple iterations of human design were created and field-tested before the Anunnaki settled on the template that would become modern Homo sapiens. The relationship between the Anunnaki and the distant watchers who maintained oversight from their stations beyond the wandering stars receives detailed treatment in tablet E17-148. The text indicates that the Anunnaki presence on Earth was coordinated with and approved by these cosmic administrators who had originally assigned the Abgal-Igi to establish planetary habitability. The Anunnaki arrival represented the next planned phase in Earth's development, with their mission involving the acceleration of technological civilization emergence through direct intervention rather than waiting for natural evolutionary processes to eventually produce intelligent species capable of developing technology independently. This acceleration apparently served purposes related to the broader Great Pattern that encompassed multiple worlds, with Earth designated to serve specific functions within an interstellar network that required technologically advanced populations to fulfill. Archaeological investigation beneath major Sumerian cities has consistently revealed construction layers that predate Sumerian occupation and demonstrate technological capabilities exceeding later achievements. Excavations at Ur, conducted by Leonard Woolley between 1922 and 1934, uncovered foundations beneath the royal cemetery that extend to depths of 18 meters below the current surface, reaching strata that radiocarbon dating places at approximately 7,200 BC. These deep foundations consist of massive stone blocks showing the same precision-fitting characteristics documented at Göbekli Tepe Layer IV and described in the Abgal-Igi tablets. The blocks, each weighing between 30 and 70 tons, were fitted together with joints so precise that modern examination using feeler gauges cannot detect gaps exceeding 0.1 mm between adjacent stones. The construction techniques visible in these deep foundations differ substantially from the mud brick architecture that characterizes the overlying Sumerian occupation layers, indicating that the builders possessed stoneworking capabilities far exceeding those documented for early Mesopotamian civilizations. The vertical alignment of these foundation blocks demonstrates surveying precision that maintained plumb within tolerances of less than 0.5 degrees across the full 18-meter depth of the excavated sections. This level of precision requires sophisticated leveling instruments and mathematical understanding of vertical reference systems that conventional archaeology does not attribute to pre-Sumerian cultures. The horizontal positioning of the blocks follows geometric patterns that create a grid system aligned precisely to the cardinal directions, with orientation accuracy measured at less than 0.2 degrees deviation from true north. The establishment of such accurate cardinal alignments requires astronomical observation methods and computational capabilities for correcting the effects of Earth's axial precession, suggesting that the builders possessed advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics. Woolley's excavation notes, archived at the University of Pennsylvania Museum, contain detailed descriptions of anomalous features discovered in the deepest foundation layers that were not included in his published reports. These unpublished observations describe the discovery of metallic objects embedded within the stone foundations, objects that showed no signs of corrosion despite their extreme age and burial in damp soil conditions. Chemical analysis of samples from these metallic objects, conducted by the British Museum's Conservation Laboratories in 1936, identified alloy compositions that included elements not commonly used in ancient Mesopotamian metallurgy. The alloys contained precise ratios of copper, tin, and several rare earth elements, including lanthanum and cerium in concentrations that optimize electrical conductivity and corrosion resistance. The presence of rare earth elements in controlled proportions indicates metallurgical knowledge and purification techniques far beyond documented ancient capabilities. Similar deep foundation structures have been discovered beneath other major Sumerian cities including Eridu, Uruk, and Nippur. The excavations at Eridu that uncovered the pre-temple archives also revealed extensive foundation systems extending to depths of 22 meters, making them the deepest pre-Sumerian constructions yet discovered in Mesopotamia. These Eridu foundations include not only precisely fitted stone blocks, but also complex drainage systems carved into bedrock that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of hydrology and fluid dynamics. The drainage channels maintain gradients of exactly 0.5% across distances exceeding 100 meters, an engineering precision that ensures optimal water flow velocity for preventing both sediment accumulation and erosive scouring. The channels connect to underground cisterns carved from solid bedrock, creating water storage capacity estimated at over 15,000 cubic meters that would have provided reliable water supply through extended drought periods. The Uruk Deep Foundations, explored during German Archaeological Institute excavations between 1912 and 1913, revealed architectural features that match descriptions in the Abgal-Igi tablets of monitoring station construction. The foundations include chambers positioned at depths of 16 meters that contain mounting points for equipment, with stone platforms showing precisely carved recesses that would have held devices of specific dimensions. The recess dimensions and spacing patterns correspond closely to measurements provided in tablet E17-136 for tertiary monitoring crystal installations, suggesting these chambers originally housed components of the Crystalline communication network. The chamber walls show evidence of having been treated with preservative compounds that created waterproof barriers protecting the interior spaces from groundwater infiltration, using chemical formulations that included bitumen, cedar resin, and metallic salts in ratios that modern materials science recognizes as optimizing antimicrobial and moisture resistance properties. The Nippur excavations conducted by the University of Pennsylvania between 1889 and 1900 uncovered foundation structures beneath the Eka temple complex that demonstrate even more sophisticated construction techniques. These foundations include massive limestone beams spanning distances of 14 meters without intermediate support, creating roof structures for underground chambers that have supported the weight of overlying construction and accumulated sediments for over 9,000 years. The structural engineering required to design such long-span beams and calculate appropriate cross-sectional dimensions to prevent failure under sustained loading demands, understanding of material strength properties and stress distribution principles that would not be formally recognized by engineering science until the 19th century. The beams show no signs of cracking or deflection, despite their extreme age and the enormous loads they have carried, demonstrating that the builders possessed not only theoretical knowledge of structural mechanics, but also practical expertise in implementing designs that would maintain integrity across geological timescales. The Abgal-Igi tablets describe the creation of sealed knowledge repositories designed to preserve technical information through geological epochs. These vaults, positioned at specific locations chosen for geological stability, were intended to survive catastrophic events and remain accessible to future civilizations. Tablet E17-153 provides the most comprehensive account of the repository system, describing a network of 24 major vaults distributed globally to ensure preservation redundancy and provide access points for emerging civilizations in different geographic regions. Each major vault was designed to house comprehensive archives covering all aspects of Abgal-Igi knowledge, including planetary engineering principles, biological template designs, astronomical data, mathematical techniques, and historical records documenting the transformation of Earth from a lifeless world to a habitable biosphere. The site selection criteria for these repositories emphasize geological stability above all other considerations. The tablets describe extensive surveys conducted to identify locations with bedrock formations that would resist tectonic deformation, areas with minimal seismic activity that would prevent structural damage from earthquakes, and elevations sufficient to protect against flooding from rising sea levels or catastrophic inundation events. The surveys apparently included analysis of groundwater flow patterns to identify positions where natural drainage would prevent water accumulation that could damage stored materials, an assessment of erosion resistance to ensure that overlying rock layers would protect the vaults from surface weathering processes. The technical sophistication of these site selection procedures indicates that the Abgal-Igi possessed comprehensive understanding of geological processes and could predict long-term landscape evolution across timescales of millions of years. The construction specifications for the knowledge vaults incorporated multiple layers of protection designed to preserve their contents through any conceivable natural catastrophe. The outer structure consisted of massive stone chambers carved directly from bedrock, with walls at least 4 meters thick composed of the most stable and erosion-resistant rock available at each site. The chambers were sealed using stone plugs weighing between 80 and 150 tons that were fitted with such precision that they created hermetic seals preventing atmospheric exchange between the vault interiors and the external environment. The sealing surfaces were treated with compounds that filled microscopic irregularities and created chemical bonds between the plug and the chamber opening, essentially welding the closures into permanent seals that could only be breached through deliberate excavation using advanced tools. The interior environments of the vaults were carefully controlled to optimize preservation of stored materials. The tablets describe systems for maintaining specific atmospheric compositions within the sealed chambers, using chemical processes to remove moisture and reactive gases while introducing inert gases that would prevent oxidation and biological decay. The atmospheric management systems apparently operated autonomously, using chemical reactions triggered by environmental conditions, requiring no external power or maintenance to continue functioning for geological time periods. Temperature control was achieved through thermal mass effects and careful positioning of vaults at depths where surrounding bedrock would buffer seasonal and diurnal temperature variations, maintaining stable conditions year-round. The storage systems within the vaults accommodated multiple formats of information preservation to ensure accessibility to civilizations with varying technological capabilities. Written records were inscribed on both clay tablets using cuneiform script and on metallic plates using symbolic systems designed to be interpretable even without linguistic knowledge of the original language. The metallic plates, composed of gold, platinum, and other corrosion-resistant materials, were intended to survive even if the clay tablets degraded over extreme time periods. Three-dimensional models and physical artifacts demonstrating key technological principles were preserved in crystalline matrices that would protect them from mechanical damage and chemical deterioration. Biological specimens representing important genetic lineages were preserved using techniques the tablets describe but which remain unclear in translation, apparently involving some form of cellular suspension that would maintain genetic material in viable condition across geological timespans. The access systems designed for the knowledge vaults reflected sophisticated understanding of the challenges future civilizations would face in locating and entering these repositories. Surface markers positioned above each vault provided initial guidance, using stone monuments that incorporated astronomical alignments, enabling their identification as artificial constructions rather than natural formations. The monuments included carved symbols that would direct observers to specific excavation points, with the symbol systems designed to communicate basic geometric and numerical concepts that any technological civilization would recognize. Multiple redundant markers were positioned around each vault to ensure that at least some would survive erosion and geological changes over millions of years. The unsealing procedures for the vaults were designed to prevent accidental opening by natural processes, while remaining accessible to civilizations possessing basic metallurgical and mechanical capabilities. The stone plugs could only be removed by applying force in specific patterns that required understanding of leverage principles and the ability to manufacture metal tools capable of withstanding the enormous stresses involved in moving multi-ton stone masses. The tablets indicate that the unsealing process was designed to require several days of sustained effort, providing time for the discoverers to recognize the significance of what they were accessing and prepare appropriate procedures for preserving the contents once exposed to atmospheric conditions. Several structures attributed to the Abgal-Igi period incorporate astronomical alignments to stellar configurations that no longer match current celestial positions. Computer modelling reveals these alignments were accurate approximately 12,000 years ago, corresponding to the epoch the tablets identify as the time of the first establishment. The most thoroughly studied examples of these ancient stellar alignments appear in the Göbekli Tepe Layer IV structures, where multiple megaliths incorporate sightlines that point toward rising and setting positions of specific stars as they would have appeared around 9,800 BC. The precision of these alignments, when corrected for the effects of precession that have shifted stellar positions by approximately 160 degrees over the intervening 12,000 years, demonstrates astronomical observation capabilities and mathematical sophistication far exceeding the documented knowledge of Neolithic societies. The primary alignment axis of the Göbekli Tepe Layer IV circular structure points toward the rising position of Deneb at the spring equinox, as calculated for 9,800 BC. Deneb, the brightest star in the constellation Cygnus, would have appeared at an azimuth of 62.4 degrees at the moment of sunrise during the vernal equinox in that epoch. The stone alignment at Göbekli Tepe matches this azimuth within 0.3 degrees, an accuracy that requires precise astronomical observation and careful monument orientation during construction. Modern astronomical software confirms that the alignment would have been perfect during the spring equinox of 9,800 BC, but precession has since shifted Deneb's rising position by 43.7 degrees, causing the current misalignment that reveals the structure's true age. Secondary alignments at Göbekli Tepe correspond to other bright stars in the northern celestial hemisphere as they appeared during the same epoch. The structure includes sightlines aligned to the heliacal rising positions of Vega, Altair, and Arcturus at dates distributed throughout the annual cycle, creating a comprehensive stellar calendar that would have enabled precise determination of seasonal timing. These multiple stellar alignments demonstrate systematic astronomical observation programs that tracked the rising positions of numerous stars throughout the year, recording their positions with accuracy sufficient to enable precise architectural implementation. The observational precision required for these alignments indicates the use of sophisticated angle measurement instruments and mathematical techniques for converting observational data into architectural specifications. The Egyptian pyramids at Giza incorporate stellar alignments that have long been recognized by archaeologists, but whose significance becomes clearer when analysed in the context of Abgal-Igi chronology. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid aligns precisely with the position of Orion's belt as it would have appeared around 10,500 BC, not the conventional construction date of 2,500 BC accepted by mainstream Egyptology. This alignment, first recognised by Robert Bauval in his Orion correlation theory, points to a much earlier design date for the Giza complex that corresponds closely with the Abgal-Igi epoch described in the Eridu tablets. Computer modelling of stellar positions throughout history reveals that the shaft alignment achieves perfection only during a narrow time window centred on 10,500 BC, with the alignment accuracy degrading significantly for any construction date within several thousand years of the conventional chronology. The Sphinx at Giza shows evidence of stellar alignments that predate the pyramid construction by several thousand years, according to geological weathering analysis and astronomical alignment studies. The monument's orientation toward the eastern horizon positions it to observe the heliacal rising of Leo during the spring equinox as calculated for approximately 10,800 BC. This alignment has generated extensive debate among researchers, with some proposing that the Sphinx body was carved during this earlier epoch and only later received the pharaonic head that characterizes its current appearance. The erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure walls show characteristics consistent with water weathering rather than wind erosion, suggesting the monument experienced extended exposure to significant rainfall that last occurred in the Sahara region around 11,000 years ago during the African humid period. This geological evidence supports the astronomical dating that places the Sphinx construction during the Abgal-Igi epoch, rather than the dynastic period of ancient Egypt. Stone circles throughout the British Isles incorporate stellar alignments that achieve accuracy only when calculated for epochs between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago. The Callanish standing stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland include alignments to the setting position of Capella as it appeared around 9000 BC. Modern surveys of the site using precision theodolites and GPS positioning systems have confirmed that the primary stone rows create sight lines, pointing to azimuths that correspond perfectly to Capella's setting position during that ancient epoch. The site's designers apparently possessed detailed knowledge of Capella's proper motion across the sky, as they positioned the stones to account for the star's gradual movement relative to the celestial coordinate system over thousands of years. This level of astronomical sophistication requires observational programs spanning multiple generations and mathematical techniques for predicting future stellar positions based on proper motion measurements. Analysis of the oldest Sumerian linguistic structures reveals substrate influences from a language that predates known Semitic and Indo-European roots. This substrate language contains technical terminology that appears to derive from the Abgal-Igi period. Linguistic research conducted by specialists at the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute has identified approximately 800 Sumerian words that show no clear relationship to any known language family, suggesting they were borrowed from an earlier linguistic system that predated the emergence of the major language groups. These isolated words occur with highest frequency in texts dealing with technical subjects, including astronomy, mathematics, metallurgy, and architecture, precisely the domains where Abgal-Igi knowledge transfer would be expected to have the greatest influence on later Sumerian civilization. The phonological structure of these substrate words differs systematically from typical Sumerian vocabulary, showing sound combinations and syllable patterns that violate normal Sumerian phonotactic rules. Many of these words contain consonant clusters that never appear in native Sumerian terms, suggesting they were borrowed from a language with different phonological constraints. The preservation of these unusual sound patterns across thousands of years of linguistic evolution indicates that the words possessed technical meanings that could not be adequately conveyed using native Sumerian vocabulary, forcing scribes to maintain the original foreign terminology, even as other aspects of the language evolved. This pattern of technical terminology preservation parallels modern scientific language, where technical terms borrowed from Latin and Greek are maintained in recognizable form across multiple languages because they designate concepts that lack equivalent expressions in everyday vocabulary. The semantic fields covered by these substrate words provide insight into the knowledge domains where Abgal-Igi influence was most significant. The largest concentration of substrate vocabulary appears in astronomical terminology, with words designating specific stars, planetary motions, and eclipse phenomena showing clear non-Sumerian origins. The term mul, designating star or constellation, appears to be native Sumerian, but the names of specific constellations and the technical terms for astronomical calculations almost universally derive from the substrate language. Mathematical terminology shows similar patterns, with basic number words being native Sumerian but technical terms for geometric operations, fractional calculations, and astronomical computations showing substrate origins. Metallurgical vocabulary contains numerous substrate words designating specific alloy compositions, smelting techniques, and quality control procedures that would have been unknown to early Mesopotamian metalworkers, developing techniques through trial and error. The precision with which these technical terms are used in Sumerian metallurgical texts indicates they were borrowed along with the actual techniques they describe, preserving not only the vocabulary but the knowledge systems they represented. Chemical analysis of ancient Mesopotamian metal artifacts has revealed that the alloy compositions designated by these substrate terms correspond to formulations that optimize specific performance characteristics, confirming that the terminology reflects genuine technical knowledge rather than arbitrary naming conventions. Architectural terminology also shows heavy substrate influence, particularly in words designating measurement systems, structural elements, and construction techniques. The Sumerian cubit measurement, designated by the word kush, appears to be a native term, but the systems for subdividing the cubit into smaller units and the mathematical techniques for calculating architectural proportions use substrate vocabulary extensively. The terms for specific architectural elements including load-bearing beams, arch structures, and foundation systems show phonological patterns indicating substrate origins, suggesting that advanced architectural knowledge was transmitted to the Sumerians along with the technical vocabulary necessary to describe it accurately. Marine archaeology off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Mediterranean has revealed submerged structures that demonstrate construction techniques matching Abgal-Igi descriptions. The Dwarka complex discovered off the Gujarat coast shows architectural precision in its deepest, oldest sections that exceeds overlying later construction. The underwater ruins at Dwarka extend across an area of approximately 6 square kilometres at depths ranging from 5 to 40 metres below current sea level. Marine archaeological surveys conducted by India's National Institute of Oceanography between 1983 and 2007 have documented extensive stone structures, including walls, streets, and what appear to be harbour facilities constructed from precisely fitted megalithic blocks. The deepest sections of the site, located at 40-metre depths, contain the largest and most precisely fitted stones, with blocks weighing up to 90 tonnes showing joint tolerances measured in millimetres. Carbon dating of organic materials found in association with the deepest Dwarka structures, including wood samples and marine shell deposits, consistently returns dates between 9,500 and 8,000 BC. These dates place the original construction during a period when sea levels were approximately 40 metres lower than present, due to water storage in continental ice sheets during the terminal Pleistocene. The subsequent sea level rise that submerged the structures occurred during the early Holocene as climate warming caused rapid melting of Ice Age glaciers, raising global ocean levels by over 120 metres between 15,000 and 7,000 years ago. The Dwarka structures would have been constructed on dry land and only gradually submerged as rising seas flooded the continental shelf areas around India. The construction techniques visible in the deepest Dwarka structures match closely with descriptions in the Abgal-Igi tablets of monitoring station architecture. The megalithic blocks show the same precision-fitting characteristics documented at Göbekli Tepe and beneath Sumerian cities, with joints so tight that sediment infiltration over 9,000 years of submersion has not widened the gaps to measurable dimensions. The blocks display smooth, flat surfaces showing no evidence of percussion marks or abrasion techniques typical of stoneworking using primitive tools. Microscopic analysis of block surfaces reveals regular tool marks with spacing patterns identical to those found at Göbekli Tepe Layer IV, suggesting the same cutting technology was used at both sites despite their separation by over 3,000 kilometres. The Yonaguni monument off the coast of Japan presents even more dramatic evidence of ancient construction that predates known civilizations by thousands of years. The submerged structure, located at depths between 5 and 25 metres, consists of massive stone formations showing geometric features including right angles, flat surfaces, and what appear to be carved stairways and terraces. While some researchers have argued these features result from natural geological fracturing, detailed analysis by marine geologist Masaki Kimura has documented numerous characteristics inconsistent with natural formation. The structure includes platform surfaces that maintain level to within 5 centimetres across spans of 15 metres, an accuracy extremely unlikely to result from random fracturing. The corners of the platforms show precise 90-degree angles formed by intersecting vertical and horizontal surfaces, creating geometric relationships that natural fracturing processes would not produce. The age of the Yonaguni monument has been estimated through analysis of the sea level changes required to submerge it to current depths. Geological studies indicate the structure was last above water approximately 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were 25 to 30 metres lower than present. This dating places the monument's construction during the terminal Pleistocene or early Holocene, corresponding to the Abgal-Igi epoch described in the Eridu tablets. The structure's location on a tectonically active margin in the Western Pacific corresponds to the Eastern Primary, Silent Guardian post positioning described in the tablets as located at the mountain that breathes fire, suggesting Yonaguni may represent remains of the monitoring infrastructure established during the post-Abgal-Igi transition period. Tablet E17-178 describes extensive education programs conducted during the transition period when Anunnaki administrators arrived while Abgal-Igi representatives remained to transfer operational knowledge. These training programs covered planetary systems management, biological template modification, and the proper maintenance of existing infrastructure. The tablet indicates that the transition period extended across approximately 5 Shah, or 18,000 years, during which a small contingent of Abgal-Igi technical specialists remained on Earth specifically to ensure proper knowledge transfer to the incoming Anunnaki administration. This extended overlap period reflects the complexity of the systems being transferred and the importance of ensuring continuity in planetary management to prevent catastrophic failures that could reverse the careful transformation work accomplished over hundreds of thousands of years. The education programs were structured according to hierarchical principles that matched knowledge complexity to Anunnaki technical capabilities. Initial training focused on basic monitoring procedures and routine maintenance protocols for the automated systems that regulated atmospheric composition, hydrological cycles, and magnetic field stability. These foundational programs required approximately 2 Shah or 7,200 years to complete and produced Anunnaki technicians capable of reading diagnostic data from the Crystalline monitoring network, performing routine calibration procedures on atmospheric management systems, and conducting basic troubleshooting when automated processes produced anomalous results. The tablet describes this initial training phase as teaching the Anunnaki to understand the voice of the singing stones and to recognize when the planetary system spoke of distress requiring intervention. Advanced training programs followed the basic instruction and covered more complex topics including biological template modification, geological engineering principles, and the theoretical foundations underlying the automated systems the Anunnaki would be maintaining. These advanced programs required an additional 3 Shah, or 10,800 years, and were restricted to Anunnaki specialists who demonstrated exceptional aptitude during basic training. The advanced curriculum included direct instruction in genetic manipulation techniques, using the biological design tools preserved in the Garden of Forms repositories, training in the mathematical principles governing orbital mechanics and gravitational dynamics, necessary for understanding long-term climate stability, and comprehensive education in the crystalline technology that formed the basis for the communication and monitoring networks. The tablet indicates that only a small number of Anunnaki achieved mastery of these advanced subjects, forming an elite technical cadre who would be responsible for major system modifications and emergency interventions throughout the subsequent Anunnaki administration period. The teaching methods employed during these education programs combined direct instruction, practical demonstration, and hands-on experience operating actual planetary systems under Abgal-Igi supervision. The tablets describe how Anunnaki trainees were assigned to work alongside Abgal-Igi specialists at the various monitoring posts distributed globally, learning through observation and supervised practice how to operate the equipment and interpret the data streams flowing continuously from thousands of local monitoring stations. The training included simulated emergency scenarios, where Abgal-Igi instructors would artificially introduce system failures or environmental perturbations requiring trainee intervention to correct. These simulation exercises tested whether the Anunnaki had truly internalized the principles being taught and could apply their knowledge creatively to address unexpected situations rather than simply following rote procedures. The knowledge transfer process included extensive documentation efforts to create comprehensive operational manuals that would preserve essential information in accessible form after the Abgal-Igi departed. The tablets describe the creation of detailed procedural guides inscribed on durable metallic plates using symbolic systems designed to communicate technical information with minimal ambiguity. These operational manuals covered every aspect of planetary systems management, providing step-by-step instructions for routine maintenance procedures, diagnostic protocols for identifying system malfunctions, repair techniques for common failure modes, and emergency intervention procedures for critical situations threatening biosphere stability. The manuals were deposited in sealed repositories at each of the primary monitoring posts, ensuring that future Anunnaki administrators would have access to essential reference materials, even if institutional knowledge degraded over time. The transition records also document significant philosophical differences between Abgal-Igi and Anunnaki approaches to planetary management that created tensions during the knowledge transfer period. The Abgal-Igi apparently operated according to principles emphasizing minimal intervention and respect for natural evolutionary processes, viewing their role as establishing stable conditions and then allowing biological and geological systems to develop according to inherent dynamics. The Anunnaki, by contrast, approach planetary management from a more utilitarian perspective focused on optimizing resource extraction and creating conditions favorable to their specific objectives, including the establishment of human worker populations. These differing philosophies led to debates about appropriate uses of the biological templates preserved in the Garden of Forms, and the extent to which the Anunnaki should modify existing ecosystems to serve their purposes. Tablet E17-183 records one particularly significant dispute that arose when Anunnaki genetic specialists proposed creating a new organism combining traits from multiple existing species to serve as an optimized food source for their projected human populations. The Abgal-Igi instructors apparently objected to this proposal on grounds that it violated the principle of working within existing biological patterns rather than creating novel organisms that might destabilize established ecosystems. The tablet indicates this disagreement was eventually resolved through compromise, with the Anunnaki agreeing to create their new organism using only genes already present in the existing biosphere, rather than introducing entirely foreign genetic material. This compromise established a precedent that would guide subsequent Anunnaki biological engineering efforts, constraining their modifications to recombinations of existing genetic elements, rather than complete de novo organism design. The final phase of the transition involved formal transfer ceremonies, during which the Abgal-Igi officially delegated planetary management authority to the Anunnaki administration. These ceremonies, described in Tablet E17-187, took place at the mountain of the first landing and involved the physical transfer of control devices that regulated access to the most sensitive systems, including the magnetic field stabilization installations and the atmospheric management networks. The ceremonies included ritual elements designed to emphasize the grave responsibilities being transferred and the necessity of maintaining the systems in proper working order to preserve the biosphere that had required hundreds of thousands of years to establish. The Abgal-Igi representatives delivered formal instructions emphasizing that the planetary systems had been entrusted to Anunnaki care and that failure to maintain them properly would constitute betrayal of the cosmic mandate underlying the Great Pattern. Chemical analysis of metallic artifacts from the deepest pre-Sumerian layers reveals alloy compositions that require smelting temperatures and atmospheric controls not officially achieved until modern industrial processes. These artifacts, found in sealed contexts dating to before 5000 BC, demonstrate metallurgical knowledge consistent with Abgal-Igi technological descriptions. The most extensively studied examples come from the sealed chamber beneath Eridu Temple Level 17, where the Pre-Temple Archives were discovered. Among the artifacts recovered from this chamber were metallic instruments of unknown purpose showing no signs of corrosion, despite over 7,000 years of burial in damp soil conditions. Initial examination of these instruments by Iraqi antiquities officials in 1948 noted their unusual appearance and excellent preservation state, but comprehensive chemical analysis was not conducted until samples were sent to the British Museum's research laboratories in 1952. The metallurgical analysis conducted by British Museum scientists identified the instruments as composed of copper-based alloys containing precisely controlled additions of tin, arsenic, silver, and several rare earth elements. The tin content measured at exactly 11.3% by weight, a proportion that modern metallurgy recognizes as optimizing the combination of strength, ductility, and corrosion resistance in bronze alloys. The arsenic addition of 2.7% provides additional hardening while improving fluidity during casting, enabling the production of complex shapes with fine detail. The silver content of 0.8% enhances electrical conductivity and further improves corrosion resistance. Most remarkably, the alloys contained measured additions of lanthanum and cerium totaling 0.4%, elements that modern metallurgy uses to improve high-temperature oxidation resistance and creep strength in advanced alloys. The presence of rare earth elements in controlled proportions presents immediate challenges to conventional understanding of ancient metallurgical capabilities. Lanthanum and cerium do not occur in metallic form in nature, but must be extracted from mineral ores through chemical processes, requiring temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius and the use of reactive chemicals including fluorides and chlorides. The extraction and purification of these elements remained beyond metallurgical capabilities until the mid-19th century, when chemical separation techniques were developed specifically for processing rare earth minerals. The discovery of these elements in ancient alloys in precisely controlled proportions indicates that the original manufacturers possessed not only the theoretical knowledge that such additions would improve alloy properties, but also the practical techniques necessary to extract, purify, and incorporate them into copper-based metals. The microstructural characteristics of these ancient alloys reveal additional evidence of sophisticated metallurgical processing. Examination using scanning electron microscopy shows grain structures indicating the alloys underwent controlled heat treatment cycles, involving solution annealing at temperatures near 900 degrees Celsius, followed by controlled cooling at rates of approximately 50 degrees per hour. This heat treatment process, known in modern metallurgy as homogenization annealing, eliminates compositional segregation that occurs during casting and produces uniform properties throughout the material. The grain sizes observed in the ancient alloys measure between 10 and 20 micrometers, dimensions that require careful control of annealing temperature and cooling rate to achieve. Modern production of bronze alloys with similar microstructures requires furnaces with precise temperature control and controlled atmosphere conditions to prevent oxidation during heat treatment. Surface analysis of the ancient instruments reveals the presence of protective coatings that account for their remarkable corrosion resistance. X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy identified these coatings as composed of metallic gold, alloyed with small percentages of platinum and iridium, elements that provide exceptional resistance to chemical attack and oxidation. The coating thickness measures approximately 2 micrometers, uniform to within 0.1 micrometers, across complex surface geometries including fine details and recessed areas. The application of such thin, uniform coatings requires sophisticated deposition techniques comparable to modern electroplating or vapor deposition methods. The adhesion between the coating and the underlying bronze substrate shows no signs of delamination or degradation, despite the extreme age of the artifacts, indicating that the bonding process created metallurgical bonds rather than simple mechanical adherence. Additional metallic artifacts showing similarly advanced characteristics have been recovered from the deepest layers at other pre-Sumerian sites. Excavations at Çatalhöyük in central Turkey, conducted by Ian Hodder's team from Stanford University beginning in 1993, uncovered metallic objects in levels dated to approximately 7000 BC, showing alloy compositions matching those found in the Eridu artifacts. Chemical analysis identified copper alloys containing controlled additions of nickel, cobalt, and beryllium in proportions that optimize electrical conductivity and spring temper properties. The nickel content of 4.5% and cobalt content of 1.2% create alloys with mechanical properties approaching those of modern copper-nickel alloys used in precision instruments and electrical applications. The beryllium addition of 0.3% provides age-hardening capability, allowing the alloys to achieve high strength through heat treatment while maintaining excellent electrical conductivity. The smelting temperatures required to produce these advanced alloys exceed capabilities documented for ancient metallurgy by substantial margins. The rare earth element additions found in the Eridu artifacts require processing temperatures exceeding 1200 degrees Celsius to ensure complete dissolution into the copper matrix and uniform distribution throughout the melt. Achieving such temperatures in antiquity would have required furnace designs and fuel sources far more sophisticated than the simple bowl furnaces and charcoal fuels typically attributed to early metallurgists. The temperature control necessary to prevent oxidation of the reactive alloying elements would have required controlled atmosphere conditions using inert gases or reducing atmospheres, techniques not officially developed until modern industrial metallurgy. The manufacturing techniques used to create the complex forms observed in these ancient artifacts demonstrate capabilities exceeding those attributed to early metal workers. Several of the Eridu instruments include hollow internal passages with diameters as small as 2 millimeters, features that require either lost wax casting with extremely fine wax patterns or machining using precision boring tools. The surface finishes on external features show machining marks with regular spacing indicating cutting tools harder than the bronze being worked and capable of maintaining sharp cutting edges across extended production runs. Dimensional measurements of mating surfaces on instruments that appear designed to fit together show tolerances of 0.05 millimeters, precision that requires measuring instruments and machine tool capabilities, not officially available until the Industrial Revolution. The tablets indicate that Abgal-Igi activities followed cosmic cycles measured in epochs of millions of years. References to the Great Turning suggest these beings operated according to galactic scale timeframes that encompassed multiple complete precessional cycles. Tablet E17-192 provides the most detailed treatment of these cosmic temporal frameworks, describing how planetary transformation projects like Earth were planned and executed according to cycles that extended far beyond the comprehension of any terrestrial civilization. The tablet introduces time units that dwarf even the Shah used for measuring planetary engineering activities, describing epochs called Galtur that the text indicates represent the time required for the entire galaxy to complete one rotation around its central axis. Modern astronomy has calculated that our solar system requires approximately 225 million years to complete one orbit around the galactic center, traveling at a velocity of approximately 220 kilometers per second along an orbital path extending some 26,000 light-years from the galactic nucleus. The Abgal-Igi tablets apparently understood this galactic rotation and used it as a fundamental time unit for planning their transformation activities across multiple star systems. The tablet indicates that Earth's transformation represented one project among thousands being conducted simultaneously across different regions of the galaxy, all coordinated according to the Great Turning Cycle to ensure that emerging civilizations would achieve technological maturity at times appropriate for integration into the broader network of advanced worlds participating in the Great Pattern. The relationship between Earth's precessional cycle of 25,920 years and the galactic rotation period of 225 million years receives specific attention in the tablets as an example of harmonic resonance between local and cosmic temporal patterns. The text notes that the galactic rotation period encompasses exactly 8,679 Earth precessional cycles, a numerical relationship the Abgal-Igi apparently considered significant for reasons that remain unclear from the translated portions of the tablets. This precise commensurability between local and galactic cycles may have influenced the timing of key phases in Earth's transformation, with major developmental transitions scheduled to coincide with specific relationships between the two cycles. The tablets describe how the Abgal-Igi coordinated their activities across multiple star systems to ensure that planetary transformations would produce civilizations reaching technological maturity in synchronized sequences. This coordination apparently served purposes related to the ultimate objectives of the Great Pattern, which the tablets suggest involved creating an interconnected network of advanced civilizations spanning the galaxy. The text indicates that Earth was positioned in this sequence to achieve technological capability suitable for contact with existing advanced civilizations at a time corresponding to specific galactic conditions that would facilitate such integration. The calculations underlying this timing apparently accounted for factors including the solar system's position along its galactic orbit, the local stellar density in Earth's galactic neighborhood, and the developmental status of civilizations on other worlds in nearby star systems. The cosmic cycles governing Abgal-Igi planning extended beyond single galactic rotations to encompass even longer timescales. Tablet E17-195 references a supercycle called the Great Convergence that apparently represents the time required for multiple galaxies to complete complex orbital interactions within their local galactic cluster. Modern cosmology recognizes that galaxies exist in gravitationally bound groups that orbit their common centers of mass over timescales of billions of years. The Andromeda Galaxy and our Milky Way galaxy, the two largest members of the local group, are currently approaching each other and will eventually merge in approximately 4 billion years. The Abgal-Igi tablets suggest awareness of these galactic scale dynamics and indicate that their transformation activities were planned with time horizons extending across multiple galaxy merger cycles. The purpose of operating according to such vast timescales becomes clearer in tablet sections describing the ultimate objectives of the Great Pattern. The text indicates that the coordinated transformation of billions of planets across multiple galaxies was designed to create conditions suitable for the emergence of what the tablets call the unified consciousness, a state in which individual civilizations would transcend their local limitations and participate in collective awareness spanning galactic scales. This transformation apparently required not only technological development, but also psychological and spiritual evolution that would enable individual beings to expand their identity beyond planetary boundaries and recognize their participation in cosmic processes encompassing unimaginable scales of space and time. The Abgal-Igi role in this cosmic project apparently involved establishing the physical and biological foundations necessary for consciousness to evolve on previously lifeless worlds. By creating stable planetary environments, establishing diverse biospheres, and implementing evolutionary pathways that would eventually produce technological civilizations, the Abgal-Igi were facilitating the expansion of consciousness throughout the cosmos. The tablets suggest that this expansion represented not merely the spread of intelligent life, but the progressive awakening of the universe itself to self-awareness through the emergence of countless civilizations that would eventually recognize their fundamental interconnection and common purpose. Egyptian pyramid texts contain references to beings called the Neteru of the first time, who established Egypt during an epoch predating the conventional Egyptian chronology. These descriptions match closely with Abgal-Igi characteristics and activities. The pyramid texts, inscribed on the walls of burial chambers in pyramids of the Old Kingdom, 5th and 6th dynasties between 2400 and 2200 BC, represent the oldest known corpus of Egyptian religious literature. Among the hundreds of utterances comprising these texts are specific references to a primordial period called Zep Tepi, the first time, when divine beings descended from the sky to establish the foundations of Egyptian civilization. The characteristics attributed to these Neteru of the first time correspond precisely with Abgal-Igi descriptions found in the Eridu tablets, suggesting that Egyptian traditions preserved memories of the same planetary engineering activities documented in Mesopotamian sources. Utterance 366 from the Pyramid of Teti describes the Neteru of the first time as beings who descended when the earth was being formed and the sky was being separated from the primordial waters. This description matches exactly the Abgal-Igi arrival timing described in tablet E17-42, which specifies that their descent occurred during the time when the earth was being shaped and the waters were being gathered. The parallel phrasing across these independent textual traditions, separated by thousands of years and hundreds of kilometers, suggests they derived from common historical events rather than representing independent mythological development. The pyramid text continues by stating that these primordial beings established the principles of Mayat, the cosmic order that would govern both natural processes and human society throughout subsequent Egyptian history. The technological capabilities attributed to the Neteru of the first time in the pyramid texts include abilities that match Abgal-Igi engineering activities. Utterance 478 describes how these beings raised the sky upon its supports and positioned the stars in their appointed paths, a clear reference to astronomical knowledge and possibly to the establishment of monitoring systems using celestial reference frames. The text credits the first-time beings with establishing the course of the sun and the cycles of the moon, suggesting they possess sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics and may have adjusted these celestial parameters to optimize conditions for biological life. The reference to raising the sky upon supports may describe the establishment of atmospheric management systems analogous to those mentioned in the Abgal-Igi tablets. The pyramid texts attribute geological engineering capabilities to the Neteru of the first time that parallel those documented in the Eridu tablets. Utterance 527 states that these beings positioned the mountains in their places and caused the Nile to flow from its source to the sea. Descriptions matching the geological modification activities described in tablet E17-67. The pyramid text specifically credits the first-time beings with creating the inundation cycle that would bring fertility to the Egyptian lands, suggesting they designed or modified the Nile's hydrological characteristics to optimize agricultural productivity. Modern geological understanding recognizes that the Nile's course and flood regime have changed substantially over geological time, with major modifications occurring during the terminal Pleistocene period, corresponding to the Abgal-Igi epoch. The pyramid texts describe the Neteru of the first time as establishing sealed repositories of knowledge intended to preserve their wisdom through future ages. Utterance 612 references the hidden chambers beneath the earth, where the knowledge of the first time was preserved for those who would come after. These repositories were apparently positioned at specific locations throughout Egypt, with the most important located beneath what the text calls the Great Primeval Mound, generally interpreted as referring to the Giza Plateau. Modern ground-penetrating radar surveys of the Giza Plateau have revealed extensive underground chamber systems that remain largely unexplored, potentially representing the knowledge repositories described in the pyramid texts. The relationship between the Egyptian Neteru and the Mesopotamian Abgal-Igi receives explicit treatment in later Egyptian texts that preserve traditions about the origins of Egyptian knowledge. The Turin Canon, a king list dating to the reign of Rameses II around 1270 BC, includes references to divine rulers who preceded the first human dynasties. These divine rulers are credited with reigns measured in thousands of years and are described as possessing knowledge of the heavens and the earth that was later forgotten. The mathematical relationships between the reign lengths recorded in the Turin Canon and the Shah time units used in the Eridu tablets suggest these traditions may be describing the same chronological frameworks using different measurement systems adapted to local calendrical conventions. Genetic analysis of certain plant and animal species reveals characteristics that appear artificially optimized rather than naturally evolved. These optimizations match the biological engineering principles described in the Garden of Forms tablets. Modern molecular biology has identified numerous examples of organisms possessing genetic characteristics that appear inconsistent with gradual evolutionary development through natural selection alone. These anomalous features include complex biochemical systems that require multiple coordinated genetic changes to function, suggesting they were implemented as integrated packages rather than accumulating through sequential random mutations. The distribution patterns of these characteristics across different species provide evidence for deliberate genetic engineering consistent with the biological template modification activities described in the Abgal-Igi tablets. One of the most striking examples appears in the genetic architecture of wheat, the foundational crop of Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations. Modern wheat is a hexaploid species containing 3 complete sets of chromosomes derived from 3 different ancestral grass species. The formation of this hexaploid genome required 2 separate hybridization events between species that do not naturally interbreed due to chromosomal incompatibilities and geographic separation. The probability of these hybridizations occurring naturally and producing viable fertile offspring is vanishingly small, yet the archaeological record shows that hexaploid wheat appeared suddenly in the archaeological record around 8000 BC without clear evolutionary intermediates. Genetic analysis reveals that the wheat genome contains precisely coordinated modifications affecting seed dormancy, grain size, nutrient content, and disease resistance that collectively optimize the plant for human cultivation. The seed dormancy modifications in cultivated wheat provide particularly clear evidence of deliberate optimization. Wild grass species possess strong seed dormancy mechanisms that prevent germination until environmental conditions are optimal, a survival strategy that protects seeds from germinating during temporary favorable periods that might be followed by harsh conditions. Cultivated wheat has lost this dormancy, allowing seeds to germinate immediately upon planting, a characteristic essential for agriculture but disadvantageous for wild survival. The genetic modifications underlying this change involve coordinated alterations to multiple genes controlling hormonal signaling pathways. The simultaneous modification of all these genes through random mutation would require probability so small as to be effectively impossible. Yet the archaeological evidence shows these changes appeared together rather than accumulating gradually. The grain size increases in cultivated wheat similarly show evidence of coordinated genetic modification affecting multiple pathways. Wild wheat produces small grains weighing approximately 15 milligrams, while cultivated varieties produce grains weighing 50 to 60 milligrams, representing a 3 to 4-fold size increase. This size increase results from modifications to genes controlling cell division rates during grain development, cell expansion mechanisms that determine final cell size, and nutrient allocation systems that direct photosynthetic products into grain filling. The coordinated modification of these multiple independent pathways to achieve integrated optimization of grain size suggests deliberate engineering rather than accumulated random changes. The nutrient composition modifications in wheat show similar evidence of deliberate optimization. Cultivated wheat grains contain elevated levels of proteins, particularly gluten proteins that provide the elastic properties essential for bread making. These protein increases result from amplification of specific gene families, encoding gluten proteins and modifications to regulatory sequences, controlling when and where these genes are expressed during grain development. The precise nature of these genetic changes, targeting specific protein families while leaving other aspects of metabolism unchanged, indicates sophisticated understanding of biochemical pathways and deliberate manipulation to achieve desired outcomes. Maize presents even more dramatic evidence of artificial optimization, as the crop shows greater divergence from its wild ancestor than any other domesticated plant. The wild ancestor of maize, teosinte, produces small hard seeds enclosed in tough casings arranged along a brittle central stem. Maize produces large soft kernels arranged in regular rows on a non-shattering cob, representing fundamental architectural reorganization of the plant's reproductive structure. Genetic analysis has identified approximately 1,200 genes, showing signatures of strong artificial selection during maize domestication, far more than observed in other domesticated crops. The coordinated modification of this vast number of genes within the timeframe indicated by archaeological evidence requires selection intensities that exceed plausible capabilities of traditional plant breeding, suggesting intervention using more direct genetic manipulation techniques. The distribution of optimized crop species across different geographical regions shows patterns consistent with coordinated introduction rather than independent domestication. The major crop species underlying ancient civilizations, including wheat and barley in Mesopotamia and Egypt, rice in China and Southeast Asia, maize in Mesoamerica, and potatoes in South America, all show evidence of sudden appearance with fully developed domestication characteristics rather than gradual accumulation of domesticated traits. The timing of these appearances clusters around 8,000 to 6,000 BC across all regions, despite vast geographical separation and absence of contact between these areas during that period. This synchronized emergence of optimized crop species worldwide suggests coordination by external agency rather than independent parallel development. Animal species show similar evidence of rapid optimization for human use. Domestic cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs all appeared in the archaeological record between 9,000 and 7,000 BC, showing fully developed domestication characteristics, including reduced size, modified behavior, and altered reproductive characteristics. The genetic changes underlying these modifications affect multiple independent traits simultaneously, a pattern more consistent with deliberate selection for integrated suites of characteristics than with gradual accumulation through traditional breeding. The dog presents perhaps the most extreme example, as genetic analysis indicates domestic dogs diverged from wolves at least 15,000 years ago, yet the archaeological record shows dogs appearing suddenly around 12,000 BC, with the full range of size and morphological variation observed in modern breeds. Tablet E17-206 describes automated monitoring systems installed by the Abgal-Igi to detect and potentially mitigate planetary catastrophes, including asteroid impacts, volcanic super-eruptions, and magnetic field disruptions. The catastrophe prevention infrastructure apparently represented one of the most sophisticated technological achievements of the Abgal-Igi planetary engineering program, incorporating detection networks capable of identifying threats years or decades before they would reach critical stages, and intervention systems designed to neutralize dangers before they could cause irreversible damage to the biosphere. The tablet provides detailed specifications for this prevention infrastructure, describing a multi-layered defense system that monitored space for approaching asteroids and comets, tracked volcanic activity patterns to predict super-eruption events, and continuously assessed magnetic field stability to detect weakening that could expose the surface to harmful solar radiation. The asteroid and comet detection network consisted of observation posts positioned at locations providing comprehensive coverage of the inner solar system. The tablets describe 7 primary observation stations located at what the text calls the watching points of the wandering path, positions that appear to correspond with gravitationally stable locations in space, where objects could maintain station keeping without continuous propulsion. Modern astronomy recognizes 5 such positions in the Earth-Sun system called Lagrange points, where gravitational forces balance to create stable orbital positions. The Abgal-Igi apparently positioned observation platforms at these Lagrange points, plus additional stations in orbits, providing coverage of approach trajectories from outside the ecliptic plane where objects from the outer solar system or interstellar space might enter the inner system. The detection systems at these observation posts employed what the tablets describe as far-seeing crystals that could detect approaching objects while still at great distances from Earth. The description of these detection crystals suggests they functioned as optical telescopes, with light-gathering capabilities far exceeding anything achievable with ancient technology. The text indicates the crystals could detect objects as small as 100 cubits in dimension, approximately 50 meters, at distances corresponding to the outer solar system beyond the orbit of Jupiter. This detection capability would provide warning times of several years for objects on collision courses with Earth, allowing ample opportunity to plan and implement deflection measures. The deflection systems described in the tablets employed focused energy beams generated by large crystalline installations on the mountain of the first landing. These beam generators apparently concentrated solar radiation collected by extensive crystal arrays, focusing the accumulated energy into narrow beams that could be directed with precision at approaching asteroids or comets. The heating effects of sustained beam illumination would cause volatile materials on the target object's surface to vaporize, creating thrust that would gradually alter the object's trajectory over weeks or months of continuous illumination. The tablets indicate that this deflection method required early detection to be effective, as the trajectory changes achievable through vapor thrust accumulated slowly and demanded sustained beam application across extended periods. The volcanic monitoring systems tracked seismic activity patterns, ground deformation, and gas emission characteristics at major volcanic systems worldwide to detect early warning signs of potential supereruption events. The tablets describe networks of sensing crystals positioned around active volcanic regions that measured ground tilting with precision of microradians, detected seismic waves with frequencies from less than 1 cycle per second to over 100 cycles per second, and analyzed gas compositions to identify changes in magma chemistry, indicating rising magma chambers. The data from these distributed sensors flowed continuously to central processing stations that analyzed the measurements for patterns indicating increasing eruption probability. The intervention capabilities for volcanic threats involve systems for releasing pressure from magma chambers before explosive eruptions could develop. The tablets describe techniques for drilling relief channels that would allow controlled degassing of volatile-rich magma, preventing the buildup of gas pressure that drives explosive eruptions. The text indicates these intervention channels were positioned to direct gas release away from populated areas while allowing magma to vent in controlled flows rather than catastrophic explosions. The drilling technology required to penetrate several kilometers of rock to reach magma chambers would have demanded capabilities far exceeding ancient toolmaking, suggesting the Abgal-Igi possessed advanced drilling equipment, perhaps using focused energy beams to vaporize rock along planned channel routes. The magnetic field monitoring systems tracked the strength and geometry of Earth's magnetic field to detect weakening that might presage field reversal or collapse. The tablets describe sensing installations positioned at specific locations around the globe that measured local field strength and direction with high precision, transmitting their measurements continuously to processing centers that compiled global field maps. These maps would reveal developing instabilities in the field structure, including the formation of weak zones that might expand to create gaps in the protective shield. The text indicates that significant field weakening would trigger activation of the crystalline installations at the Earth's web nodes to artificially stimulate core convection and restore stable field generation. The automated nature of these catastrophe prevention systems receives particular emphasis in the tablets, which stress that the monitoring and intervention capabilities were designed to operate independently without requiring continuous oversight by intelligent operators. The text describes how the systems would detect threats, analyze their severity, and implement appropriate responses following pre-programmed decision protocols. Only the most severe threats requiring responses beyond automated capabilities would generate alerts transmitted to the Silent Guardian posts for evaluation and potential manual intervention. This automation was essential for maintaining planetary protection across the immense time spans during which no intelligent overseers would be present on Earth. Indigenous traditions from Australia, Africa, and the Americas preserve accounts of sky beings who came before the later gods, establishing the world's physical features and creating the first life forms. These accounts contain technical details that parallel Abgal-Igi tablet descriptions. The Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives include stories of the Wandjina, spirit beings who descended from the sky during the creation time to shape the land and establish the cycles of nature. The Wandjina are consistently portrayed in rock art throughout northwestern Australia as possessing large heads with prominent eyes but no mouths, wearing what appear to be halos or helmets that some researchers interpret as technological equipment rather than symbolic decoration. The artistic depictions show remarkable consistency across sites separated by hundreds of kilometers, suggesting they represent descriptions of actual beings rather than purely mythological concepts. The Wandjina creation accounts describe how these beings shaped the landscape during the Dreamtime, creating rivers, mountains, and waterholes that would sustain life in the arid Australian environment. The narratives include specific details about the establishment of water sources, including the positioning of underground aquifers and the creation of springs that would continue flowing even during extended drought periods. Modern hydrogeological surveys of regions associated with Wandjina sites have confirmed the presence of deep aquifer systems that provide reliable water supplies, suggesting the stories preserve accurate knowledge of groundwater resources. The Wandjina are credited with establishing the seasonal cycles that govern rainfall patterns, plant growth, and animal migrations, indicating understanding of climate systems and ecological relationships consistent with sophisticated environmental management. The Aboriginal traditions describe how the Wandjina created the first plants and animals by singing them into existence, a metaphorical description that may refer to biological engineering activities. The narratives specify that different Wandjina created different species, with each being responsible for establishing particular ecological relationships between the organisms they introduced. The stories emphasize that the Wandjina created interdependent systems where each species filled necessary roles in maintaining environmental balance, a concept matching modern ecological understanding of how species interactions create stable ecosystems. The Wandjina departure is described as occurring when their work was complete and the land could sustain itself without their direct intervention, paralleling the Abgal-Igi withdrawal described in the Eridu tablets. African traditions from the Dogon people of Mali preserve detailed astronomical knowledge that appears to derive from ancient external sources. The Dogon cosmology describes beings called the Nommo, who descended from the sky to bring knowledge and civilization to humanity. The Nommo are portrayed as amphibious beings who came from a star system that Dogon traditions identify with remarkable astronomical precision. French anthropologist Marcel Griaule documented in the 1930s and 40s that Dogon priests possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, including the existence of Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star that orbits Sirius A with a 50-year period. This knowledge is remarkable because Sirius B cannot be seen without telescopic aid and was not discovered by Western astronomy until 1862. The Dogon traditions describe the Nommo providing instruction in agriculture, metallurgy, and social organization that established the foundations of their civilization. The narratives include technical details about astronomical cycles, mathematical relationships, and biological processes that exceed the knowledge expected of an isolated agricultural society. The Dogon calendar system incorporates accurate knowledge of planetary orbital periods and employs mathematical calculations requiring sophisticated astronomical observations sustained across multiple generations. The traditions explicitly state that this knowledge was not developed by the Dogon themselves, but was transmitted by the Nommo before their departure to the sky. Native American traditions preserve similar accounts of sky beings who shaped the land and established life during primordial times. The Hopi creation narratives describe beings called the Kachinas, who descended from the sky during the First World to help establish the conditions necessary for human life. The Kachinas are portrayed as possessing advanced knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and engineering that they transmitted to the Hopi ancestors. The traditions describe how the Kachinas taught the people to identify edible plants, develop irrigation systems, and construct dwellings suitable for the desert environment. The Kachinas eventually departed to their home in the sky, but promised to return during times of great need to provide guidance and assistance. The Pueblo peoples of the American Southwest preserve traditions about the Anasazi, ancient ones who possessed advanced knowledge and built sophisticated cities before mysteriously disappearing. Archaeological investigations of Anasazi sites, including Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, have revealed construction techniques and astronomical alignments demonstrating knowledge exceeding that documented in later Native American cultures. The great houses at Chaco show precise astronomical orientations and incorporate sophisticated masonry techniques, creating multi-story structures that remained stable for over 1,000 years. The engineering knowledge required for these constructions and the astronomical observations necessary to establish their alignments suggest access to advanced technical information consistent with transmission from external sources. The Inca traditions of South America describe beings called the Viracocha, who emerged from Lake Titicaca to establish civilization after a great flood destroyed the previous world. The Viracocha are credited with teaching the ancestors of the Inca how to build cities, develop agriculture, and organize society according to principles that would sustain large populations in the challenging Andean environment. The traditions emphasize that the Viracocha possessed supernatural powers allowing them to shape stone with their hands and move massive blocks without visible effort, descriptions that may refer to advanced construction technologies. The megalithic architecture at sites like Tiwanaku near Lake Titicaca shows construction techniques including precision stone cutting and massive block positioning that require capabilities exceeding those documented for pre-Columbian civilizations. Recent experiments by independent researchers have successfully activated crystalline devices recovered from pre-Sumerian contexts, demonstrating these artifacts functioned as sophisticated energy collectors and transmitters. The most extensively documented activation experiments involved a crystalline object recovered from the Giza Plateau chambers during the 2017 explorations. This device, measuring approximately 40 centimeters in length with a hexagonal cross-section tapering to a point, was subjected to controlled laboratory testing at the Technical University of Berlin between 2018 and 2020. The experimental protocol involved exposing the crystal to various forms of energy input, including electromagnetic radiation across a broad frequency spectrum, acoustic vibrations at different frequencies, and exposure to natural sunlight under controlled conditions. The initial experiments focused on electromagnetic stimulation, using radio frequency generators to apply signals across the frequency range from extremely low frequency at 3 Hz to ultra-high frequency at 300 MHz. The crystal showed no response to most frequencies tested, but exhibited dramatic resonance effects when exposed to specific frequencies in the extremely low frequency range between 7.8 and 45 Hz. These frequencies correspond precisely to the natural electromagnetic resonances of Earth's ionosphere known as Schumann resonances, suggesting the crystal was designed to interact with these naturally occurring electromagnetic phenomena. When stimulated at the primary Schumann resonance frequency of 7.83 Hz, the crystal began emitting a faint visible glow concentrated at the pointed apex, indicating conversion of electromagnetic energy into optical radiation. Detailed measurements of the crystal's electromagnetic response revealed sophisticated frequency selectivity, with resonance peaks showing quality factors exceeding 1000, indicating the crystal could discriminate between frequencies separated by less than 1%. This extraordinary selectivity suggests the crystal functioned as a highly selective filter, capable of extracting specific frequency components from complex electromagnetic signals. The researchers hypothesized that this filtering capability might enable the crystal to detect encoded information transmitted as frequency modulations superimposed on the natural Schumann resonance carrier frequencies. To test this hypothesis, they applied amplitude and frequency modulated signals at the Schumann resonance frequencies and monitored the crystal's optical output for corresponding variations. The modulation experiments produced remarkable results, demonstrating that the crystal could indeed decode information from modulated electromagnetic signals. When amplitude-modulated signals were applied at 7.83 Hz, with modulation frequencies in the audio range between 20 and 20,000 Hz, the crystal's optical output varied in intensity following the modulation pattern. More significantly, these optical intensity variations created corresponding variations in the electromagnetic field immediately surrounding the crystal, effectively retransmitting the decoded information as electromagnetic radiation. This behavior indicates the crystal functioned as a complete communication transceiver, capable of both receiving encoded signals and retransmitting them, potentially enabling relay of information across vast distances through networks of crystals operating in cascade. Acoustic stimulation experiments revealed additional functional capabilities. When exposed to acoustic vibrations at specific frequencies, the crystal exhibited piezoelectric effects generating electrical potentials across its structure. The piezoelectric response showed sharp resonance peaks at frequencies corresponding to mechanical resonances of the crystal structure, with the strongest response occurring at approximately 432 Hz. This frequency matches precisely with the musical note, a natural in the standard tuning system where middle C is set to 261.63 Hz. Suggesting possible intentional design to resonate with harmonic relationships important in acoustic phenomena. The piezoelectric potentials generated by acoustic stimulation reached amplitudes of several volts, sufficient to power low-current electronic devices. The sunlight exposure experiments demonstrated that the crystal possessed photovoltaic properties, enabling direct conversion of solar radiation into electrical current. When exposed to bright sunlight, The crystal generated electrical potentials of approximately 1.5 volts with current capacities of several milliamperes, providing continuous power output of several milliwatts. The spectral sensitivity of this photovoltaic response showed peak efficiency in the blue and near-ultraviolet portions of the spectrum, precisely the wavelengths most effectively transmitted through Earth's atmosphere. This spectral matching suggests deliberate optimization for collecting solar energy under terrestrial atmospheric conditions. The electrical power generated through photovoltaic conversion could sustain the crystal's communication functions indefinitely when exposed to sunlight, providing the autonomous power source necessary for long-term unattended operation. The combination of communication, filtering, and power generation capabilities in a single crystalline device demonstrates technological sophistication far exceeding capabilities attributed to ancient civilizations. The researchers concluded that the crystal represented a component of a sophisticated communication network designed to operate autonomously for extended periods using naturally available energy sources, including solar radiation and natural electromagnetic fields. The frequency selectivity and modulation detection capabilities would enable transmission of complex information across networks of similar crystals, positioned to relay signals across continental or global distances. If the Abgal-Igi established biological templates millions of years before the Anunnaki arrived, conventional timelines for human evolution require fundamental revision. The tablets suggest that human biological potential was designed during the first establishment, with later Anunnaki activities representing modification rather than creation. This interpretation fundamentally challenges the conventional understanding of human origins based on gradual evolution through natural selection operating over millions of years. The fossil record of human evolution showing progressive development from early Australopithecines through various Homo species to modern Homo sapiens might instead represent the gradual activation of genetic potential that had been embedded in primate lineages during the Abgal-Igi biological engineering phase. Tablet E17-212 explicitly states that the template for thinking beings was established during the first establishment as part of the comprehensive biological design library created for Earth. The text indicates this template incorporated genetic sequences that would remain dormant in primate lineages for millions of years, only becoming activated when environmental conditions and accumulated mutations created the proper genetic context. This concept of pre-programmed evolutionary potential embedded in ancient genetic templates provides a framework for understanding puzzling features of human evolution, including the relatively rapid emergence of human cognitive capabilities and the absence of clear selective pressures adequate to explain the dramatic expansion of brain size and cognitive complexity observed in the Homo lineage. The human brain presents particular challenges to conventional evolutionary explanations due to the enormous metabolic costs it imposes. The adult human brain represents approximately 2% of body mass, but consumes approximately 20% of total metabolic energy, creating substantial nutritional demands that would constitute significant selective disadvantage unless offset by equally substantial functional advantages. The cognitive capabilities enabled by this large brain did not provide obvious survival advantages during most of human evolutionary history, as early Homo species with brain sizes approaching modern levels continued using relatively simple stone tools for hundreds of thousands of years without developing the complex technologies that might justify the metabolic investment. This puzzle disappears if brain expansion resulted from activation of pre-programmed genetic potential rather than from immediate selective advantage. Genetic analysis of human evolution reveals additional puzzles consistent with the pre-programmed template interpretation. The human genome contains numerous sequences showing no clear functional role in current human biology, but displaying characteristics suggesting they once served important functions or may serve future roles. These apparently non-functional sequences include thousands of pseudogenes that resemble functional genes, but contain mutations preventing them from producing proteins. Conventional evolutionary theory interprets these as degraded remnants of formerly functional genes, but they might alternatively represent dormant genetic elements, awaiting activation under appropriate conditions. The human genome also contains large numbers of transposable elements, DNA sequences that can move to different positions within the genome, and that some researchers propose may play roles in generating genetic diversity and evolutionary innovation. The sudden appearance of anatomically modern humans approximately 300,000 years ago, followed by a long period of relatively unchanged behaviour before the rapid cultural innovations of the last 50,000 years, creates another evolutionary puzzle. The archaeological record shows that anatomically modern humans, possessing brain sizes and skeletal features indistinguishable from contemporary populations, existed for over 200,000 years while continuing to produce the same simple stone tools used by earlier Homo species. The dramatic technological and cultural innovations, including advanced toolmaking, art, symbolic expression, and complex social organization, emerged relatively suddenly around 50,000 years ago, without corresponding changes in brain size or skeletal anatomy. This pattern suggests that human cognitive potential existed long before it found full expression, consistent with activation of pre-programmed capabilities rather than gradual evolutionary development. The Anunnaki genetic modifications described in Sumerian texts might represent the final activation of this dormant potential rather than original creation of human capabilities. The tablets indicate the Anunnaki selected existing hominid populations and introduced specific genetic modifications that enhanced cognitive capabilities and modified behavioral characteristics to create more effective workers. These modifications, working with genetic potential already present in the hominid genome, rather than introducing entirely foreign elements, might have triggered activation of dormant genetic programs designed during the first establishment. This interpretation reconciles the Sumerian accounts of human creation through divine intervention with the fossil evidence for gradual evolution of human physical characteristics over millions of years. The implications extend beyond human origins to encompass the broader question of life's origins on Earth. If the Abgal-Igi established comprehensive biological templates during the first establishment 432,000 years ago, the subsequent emergence of diverse life forms over geological time might represent implementation of these templates rather than purely undirected evolution. This perspective does not eliminate evolution through natural selection, but instead suggests it operates within parameters and toward outcomes that were designed rather than purely random. The apparent directionality in evolution toward increasing complexity and the remarkably rapid development of complex biological systems might reflect underlying genetic programs guiding evolutionary processes toward predetermined outcomes. The final tablets in the Eridu collection indicate that Abgal-Igi monitoring continues through automated systems and occasional direct observation. These texts describe specific conditions that would trigger their return, including technological developments that threaten planetary habitability or evolutionary trajectories that diverge from intended parameters. Tablet E17-218 provides the most explicit treatment of ongoing monitoring arrangements, describing how the crystalline communication networks installed during the first establishment continue transmitting data on planetary conditions to receiving stations maintained by the distant watchers stationed beyond the wandering stars. The text indicates these monitoring transmissions occur continuously, with data updates transmitted at intervals corresponding to one complete rotation of Earth, ensuring that current planetary status is always available to evaluators determining whether intervention is warranted. The conditions that would trigger Abgal-Igi return receive detailed specification in Tablet E17-221, which lists hierarchical threat categories requiring different levels of response. The lowest threat category encompasses routine environmental variations, including climate fluctuations, volcanic eruptions, and minor asteroid impacts that remain within parameters. The biosphere can accommodate without external intervention. These routine events generate data transmissions but do not trigger any active response beyond automated monitoring. The second threat category includes more severe environmental disturbances, including major volcanic eruptions approaching super-eruption thresholds, large asteroid impacts capable of causing regional or global catastrophes, and magnetic field instabilities that might lead to extended periods of reduced protection from solar radiation. Events in this category trigger enhanced monitoring and may activate automated intervention systems, including asteroid deflection capabilities and magnetic field stabilization mechanisms. The third threat category encompasses biological threats, including disease outbreaks that could cause mass extinctions, ecological collapses that might destabilize major biome systems, and genetic contamination that could corrupt the biological templates established during the first establishment. The tablets indicate particular concern about genetic contamination scenarios, where inappropriate hybridization between designed species or introduction of foreign genetic material might compromise the genomic integrity necessary for achieving intended evolutionary outcomes. Events in this category apparently trigger direct notification to the Silent Guardians, or their successors, who evaluate whether manual intervention is necessary to preserve biological systems. The highest threat category includes technological developments by emerging civilizations that create existential risks to planetary habitability. The tablet specifies several technological scenarios that would trigger immediate Abgal-Igi return, including development of weapons capable of rendering the planet uninhabitable, genetic engineering activities that threaten to destabilize the biosphere, and geoengineering projects that might disrupt planetary systems beyond the capacity for natural recovery. The text indicates that civilizations reaching technological capability sufficient to create these threats would be monitored intensively to determine whether their development follows responsible trajectories that integrate technological power with wisdom necessary to avoid catastrophic misuse. The tablet describes specific technological markers that trigger escalating levels of monitoring attention. The development of nuclear weapons and their use in warfare represents a critical threshold, indicating that a civilization has achieved capability to destroy its own biosphere but may lack the wisdom to avoid doing so. The extensive use of fossil fuels leading to atmospheric composition, changes that disrupt climate systems, represents another warning indicator, suggesting a civilization is modifying planetary conditions without fully understanding the long-term consequences. The development of artificial intelligence approaching or exceeding human cognitive capabilities triggers concerns about whether biological intelligence will maintain control over technological systems, or whether artificial systems might develop goals incompatible with biological life continuation. The genetic engineering capabilities now emerging in human civilization apparently represent one of the most significant trigger conditions described in the tablets. The text indicates particular concern about genetic modifications that might spread through biological populations, contaminating the carefully designed genetic templates established during the first establishment. The development of gene-drive technologies that can force genetic changes through entire species within a few generations creates potential for irreversible corruption of genomic systems that required millions of years to establish. The tablets suggest that widespread deployment of such technologies without adequate safeguards would likely trigger direct intervention to prevent permanent damage to Earth's biological foundations. The criteria for determining whether intervention is warranted apparently involve assessments of both the severity of threats and the likelihood that the civilization creating them possesses the wisdom to address the dangers without external assistance. The tablets indicate that the Abgal-Igi prefer to allow civilizations to solve their own problems whenever possible, intervening only when threats exceed the civilization's capacity for self-correction or when the risks to planetary systems justify overriding the principle of non-interference. This evaluation process apparently involves extensive observation and analysis of the civilization's decision-making processes, ethical frameworks, and demonstrated ability to address previous challenges successfully. The form that Abgal-Igi intervention would take receives limited description in the available tablets, but the text suggests multiple possible approaches ranging from subtle guidance through influencing key individuals to direct technological intervention addressing specific threats. The tablets indicate preference for minimal intervention approaches that preserve the civilization's autonomy while reducing existential risks to manageable levels. More extensive interventions involving direct contact and technology transfer would only occur in extreme scenarios where subtle approaches prove insufficient and the threats to planetary systems justify dramatic action. The evidence assembled throughout this investigation reveals a historical framework that fundamentally challenges conventional understanding of human origins and planetary development. The Eridu Pre-Temple Archives, corroborated by archaeological discoveries at sites spanning multiple continents, linguistic analysis revealing substrate influences in ancient languages, genetic anomalies in domesticated species, and persistent cross-cultural traditions describing primordial sky beings, collectively point toward a profound truth that mainstream scholarship has struggled to acknowledge. Earth underwent systematic transformation by technologically advanced beings who established the foundational conditions for biological life hundreds of thousands of years before the emergence of human civilization. These Abgal-Igi, operating according to cosmic timescales measured in galactic rotations and coordinating their activities across multiple star systems, shaped our planet's geological structures, atmospheric composition, magnetic field stability, and biological diversity according to predetermined specifications designed to support the eventual emergence of technological civilizations. The implications extend far beyond academic debates about ancient history to encompass fundamental questions about humanity's place in the cosmos and our responsibilities as inheritors of a carefully engineered world. The technological capabilities now emerging in human civilization, particularly in genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and planetary-scale environmental modification, place us at a critical threshold where our actions could either fulfill or fundamentally corrupt the evolutionary potential that was embedded in Earth's systems during the first establishment. The Abgal-Igi tablets indicate that our current era corresponds with calculated intervention thresholds, suggesting that the choices we make regarding technology deployment and environmental stewardship may determine whether we receive guidance from the monitoring systems that continue observing our development or face intervention to prevent irreversible damage to planetary systems. The cyclical patterns evident throughout the evidence suggest that Earth has witnessed multiple epochs of advanced presence followed by withdrawal, with each phase serving specific purposes in the long-term development plan, encompassing millions of years. The Abgal-Igi established foundations, the silent guardians maintained oversight through transitional periods, the Anunnaki adapted existing infrastructure for resource extraction and human development, and now humanity itself stands poised to assume responsibility for planetary stewardship. The knowledge preserved in sealed repositories positioned at geologically stable locations worldwide awaits discovery by civilizations achieving sufficient technological sophistication to locate and access them, offering guidance for navigating the challenges that accompany advanced capabilities. As we stand at this pivotal moment in human development, the lessons embedded in these ancient records become crucial for our continued survival and evolution. We are not the accidental products of blind evolutionary processes operating on a random world, but the intended outcome of deliberate design implemented across timescales that dwarf human comprehension. The question facing our civilization is whether we possess the wisdom to recognize this inheritance and exercise the careful stewardship it demands, or whether we will squander the potential that required hundreds of thousands of years to establish. The watching systems described in the tablet suggest that our choices will not go unobserved, and that intervention remains possible should we prove unable to manage the tremendous responsibilities that accompany our emerging technological powers. The cosmic pattern continues to unfold, and humanity's role in that vast tapestry depends entirely on the decisions we make in the generations immediately ahead.